In this tale, a man was initially just playing a game in his room. Eventually, however, the protagonist himself was baffled as to how he had found himself in a forest. 21-year-old was the story's protagonist. Was playing online, a massively multiplayer online role-playing game that drove players insane. Was a recent college graduate who spent all of his time playing this game. His headaches started to get worse after he played nonstop for 3 days and 3 nights. Normally, an item would drop within 2 hours, but after 10 hours it abruptly stopped dropping. All of the partygoers had also gathered, and he continued playing without getting any sleep before experiencing some sort of lightness. The hero was in this location when he had already woken up. He had never been here before and his body felt light. Thought it odd that he was now dressed in his regular clothes, including the same casual shirt. The man grinned and sighed, thinking that this had to be a dream. It's likely that he just fell asleep because 4 nights without sleep was too much for him. He would have to apologize to his fellow guild members later for this. The man strolled on with these ideas, but his eyes caught sight of something close by. As came to a halt, he noticed multiple wolves consuming their prey while glaring at him. Unaware of what was happening, the hero made the decision to investigate the beasts more closely. As he got closer, he saw that one of them was a 6-legged dog. The dog bared its teeth and barked menacingly at him. These animals apparently fled with loud barking after becoming frightened of the hero. Since he was already having dreams about game creatures, the man believed that he was a true gamer. He reasoned that this situation would be abnormal in real life if he were to use it as a metaphor. His panel window appeared directly in front of his face as soon as he mentioned his status. Was shocked to see that it was indeed his panel. The hero assumed that the status window appeared because he said the necessary word, but he did not understand why. In that instance, he chose to investigate it and discovered a problem. Either his mana indicator was too large, or it seemed to him. He started to wonder what the world's average mana value was. Magic points that were expended during the use of magic were under the control of mana. Was aware that the average person in this world had 10 mana points, but he seemed to be unique in some way. However, since it was still a dream, it made no difference to him. The moment the hero considered this, he became aware of an odd, otherworldly quality in his abilities. He was now a 10th rank. The position he held in the former world determined his abilities. This affected a number of traits, including the propensity for magic and the rate at which skills were learned. The note about how high a place he held in the previous world was read again by the hero. This must still be a dream, thought as she leaned against a tree trunk, but this forest, like everything else here, was very realistic. When heard a noise nearby, he turned to face it. He was being pursued by a pack of 6-legged dogs. These dogs bared their teeth at the man, obviously unhappy with his appearance. "These dogs are also very believable," said with a sly smile. The hero knew he had to flee when the pack came after him. These were terrifying, even in a dream. Here the hero was ensnared by yet another peculiarity. Unaware of why he was running so quickly, turned to face the pack. He suspected that the otherworldly skill was responsible for all of this. He was running a lot faster than normal now. The hero couldn't escape these dogs because they were as swift as he was. The guy did not know what was wrong with these green dogs and fled from the rabid pack. Soon had the idea to scale a tree branch. With a smug grin, he turned to face the dog that was staring at him from the ground. The hero was ecstatic that his leaping strength had also increased. He couldn't sit here indefinitely, though. Believed that he should possess more practical abilities than these, so he needed to figure out how to get out of this forest. The analysis button was used by the hero. The user was able to use appraisal on an object within sight thanks to analysis. This meant that he could view information about animals because of it. It seemed like this skill was overpowered based on the description. After giving it some more thought, concluded that he could evaluate this dog from a distance if he could apply the skill without making direct contact. The hero looked at the creature's open statistics and aimed his skill at it. It was discovered that the green dog was a rank F wolf. It lacked mana but had 355 health units. This beast lacked skills as well. Was relieved that everything went smoothly. He had no idea how powerful rank F monsters were, but it had 32 strength points in spite of 1 intelligence point. He wouldn't want to battle this monster. The man looked at his status to see if there were any skills. He had a magical talent that strengthened his fire spell and allowed him to learn magic far more quickly than usual. The description of Sword Master was nearly identical. But the man had no weapon and no idea how to use magic. This was all he could guess. Requested that the inventory be opened and that an item be taken out. The hero believed he had actually summoned something after experiencing a distortion of space. His status showed another intriguing panel with a lot of empty cells. Exclaimed with joy that this was the inventory, thinking that at least something was present. Without a doubt, the number below 1000 represented the maximum MP or the inventory's capacity. His 0 then meant only one thing. His inventory was completely empty. Similar to the inventory and status, there might be undiscovered hidden commands. For instance, he had to pronounce the spell name in order to use magic. The man summoned a fireball after deciding to give it a try and pointing his hand in the direction of the wolf. There was nothing the hero could do. If the flame itself came out of his hands, that would be far better for him. How he produced flame from his palm was a mystery to the hero himself. He was frightened by the sudden appearance of fire. Unaware of what was going on, the hero sat on the branch once more. This must be the fireball, he thought. He started to surmise that in order to use magic, he had to visualize the spell. There was a smug grin on his face. Either way, he could just try to visualize a sphere of fire in his hand. The size of this sphere was larger than the last one. Found all of this fascinating, something he had not experienced in a long time. The man reasoned that it would be extremely foolish of him to not find this enjoyable. He attempted to visualize the formation of the fire sphere in his hand. His magic really started working when he pictured the fire sphere. All he had to do was visualize it and aim the sphere at the green wolf. Was astounded that he had actually accomplished this. The fire sphere struck the green wolf's body directly after it failed to dodge. Immediately igniting, the wolf attempted to flee. However, the fire was so intense that the wolf just fell to the ground and burned to death. The startled man dropped to the ground and walked over to the burned wolf. Upon examining its corpse, he concluded that he had actually succeeded, and he clenched his fist. The hero cried out in delight that everything had gone according to plan. He was shouting with joy when he heard a notification. To see what was happening, the hero opened his status panel once more. He thought he had simply heard the leveling up sound. There was a 500-point increase in his maximum mana number. He was skilled in martial arts, analysis, sword mastery, magic, and fire magic, with the ability to perform all forms of magic. The hero assumed that he used his fire magic, which elevated it to first level. The man became alarmed when the animal corpse started to burn even hotter. His fire kept spreading for some reason. Confused, scanned the area for water. He reasoned that there ought to be a river close by. He calmed down a little, remembering that he had magic. He had to visualize the water coming from a fire hose. Was able to call forth water magic. He now had access to a new first-level water magic. Efficiency was based on level and productivity on intelligence. Something seemed to be leaking out of the man's body. Figured that mana point expenditure was the cause of all of this. This resulted in some low-grade magic even though he did not have the maximum amount of mana. He had to check the inventory now. The hero saw that he had one plant and one animal in the inventory when he opened the window. The cheerful man looked up at the sky, thinking that this appeared to be more than a dream. Thought that all of this was in which the main character enters a different reality. After reading a number of works on the subject, he had a nagging suspicion that he had arrived there as well, calmed down oddly when he said this aloud. He had no other family or best friends, and his parents had died in a car accident 2 years prior. Players were abandoning the game because it was losing players. The hero believed that nothing kept him on Earth any longer, so he was sent here. The hero was aware that he was in a different world, but he still had no idea how to get back to his own. He could live here and enjoy himself if he was unable to go back. Wished this world wouldn't be dreary and dull. In the middle of his thoughts, the hero heard a nearby scream, rushed over to the sound, thinking that someone was nearby. The hero saw a pack of wolves attacking travelers as he fled the forest. 2 armed individuals used terrified horses to defend their carriage. The travelers were greeted by the wolves' enormous maw, and one of them clung ferociously to a young man's blade. The hero believed that they were being attacked by green wolves, so he felt compelled to assist them in some way. However, his water magic would be of no use to them at such a distance. Additionally, the wagon would catch fire if he employed fire magic. There was nothing to be done. It would be his first time, but he had to give it a shot. The hero first attempted to visualize a spear tip. He then attempted to create a stone that would be able to pierce the green wolf. Before the hero, a strangely shaped stone-sharp arrow materialized in the air. Using earth magic, the hero launched the arrow forward. One of the wolves stumbled to the side as the stone spear lodged itself in its ribs. His spear broke against the wolf's body despite the speed of his attack, believed it was insufficiently powerful. The entire pack of wolves turned to face him as a result of his attack. The wolves started to creep toward, bare their teeth at the new foe. He was still able to win a little time in spite of his issues. The travelers killed a number of wolves by taking advantage of this circumstance. The man used a spear to kill a wolf, and the man with dark hair chopped off one of their heads. Was thrilled by their abilities. Once more, one of the beasts glanced at the passengers. The man declared that there was still one large wolf and recommended that they do this together. The man with the dark hair swung the spear after making a sweeping leap. They hit the monster and severed its head at the same time. The wolf's massive body dropped to the ground. All this time, watched the travelers in astonishment. In awe, the hero parted his lips. The dark-haired man thanked the unidentified individual for assistance and waved his hand at him. Didn't appear to be an adventurer, but he was apparently from the forest. The man with the dark hair questioned about how he got into the forest. The hero clarified that he did not know how he got here because he was in the forest as soon as he woke up and did not fully comprehend it. Such a story, he believed, would fit them. The man appeared fine, but one of the companions thought he had been attacked by monsters. This was not true at all, the hero replied. The man with dark hair gave San a disapproving glance. Suddenly, a small elderly man cautiously emerged from the cart. Thinking the hero had saved them, he thanked him for his assistance. It turned out that the elderly man was a merchant. The hero introduced himself as and was happy to meet him. With a smile, the merchant requested that his name be pronounced once more. Once more, the man spoke his name in syllables, expressed regret for this. Was the hero as far as he could tell. He claimed to have amnesia earlier, then he could assist him. Questioned the man if he had cash on him or anything that would prove who he was. The hero turned his head away and replied that he actually had nothing. The elderly man surmised that he might have misplaced his belongings in the forest. He wouldn't be allowed to enter the city without identification. In that instance, requested that a pouch of coins be taken in order to pay the guild registration fee and deposit. The bewildered thanked for assistance and apologized for the inconvenience. Examining the gleaming coins in the pouch, the man looked. After giving the elderly man a curious glance, the hero explained that these were silver coins. Didn't mean for it to think that this was too little for him. Assuming that the man had also forgotten their money, a girl emerged from the carriage. He was identified as San by the young girl who smiled at him. The girl who went by was in guild administrator. The girl requested to be called just Sally. San was asked by Sally if they could bring him along. She doesn't want to abandon him here. I don't mind, the elderly man said with a smile. The carriage continued to move while and the others sat in it. From the start, Sally requested permission to explain everything. First of all, they were now close to on a forest road. In summary, Sally and San were accompanied by bodyguards because they were now close to the forest south of the city where monsters frequently appear. The hero also became aware of this world's currency. Iron is the lowest valued coin, followed by copper, silver, gold, and large gold. Sally believed that this was all there was to it for the time being. One iron coin cost 1 tael and the tael cost roughly 10 yen. Expressed gratitude to the girl for the explanation. An apple fell from the barrel close to as a result of the carriage trembling. Didn't understand why they needed all of the items in this wagon because there is inventory in this world. The hero questioned about why they didn't use inventory. In response, the elderly man stated that magic talent was a prerequisite for using this skill. It is very convenient for merchants because time stops in the inventory, but the mages who could use it were typically high-ranking adventurers or national soldiers, which makes them costly to hire. As a result, they could only carry so much. Inventory is typically only used when transporting particularly valuable items. The hero comprehended everything and expressed gratitude for the explanation, realizing that his magic ability was the only reason he had inventory. Decided that it would be better to conceal his skills, which appeared uncommon, in order to avoid standing out in the future. This reminded him of the analysis skill, which can also conceal his skills and other information shown on the status screen. The carriage carrying and the others soon came to a stop close to the city gate. On the gate was a sign bearing the name of the city. A weary-looking soldier yawned and requested that the men present their identification. The hero paused before responding, but Sally reassured him that he lacked identification. The soldier, unable to comprehend how this was possible, stared at the men in shock. In that instance, he said he would allow them to handle the magic instrument in exchange for 1 silver coin as payment. When asked what it was, Sally clarified that it was a magical tool that would evaluate whoever touched it. They used this because they shouldn't allow bandits to enter the city. Upon presenting the guild card, his money would also be reimbursed. They could go there because San had already given them the money for the guild registration fee. Inside, Sally would wait for him. The hero thought the girl was a very good person and thanked her for her assistance. The hero saw his status when he touched the magic instrument. He was unsure if this was a good or bad thing. He must have been able to read all of this because of his ability to comprehend a foreign language. He had no trouble communicating with Sally either. It most likely translated words and vice versa. The weary soldier said he did not seem to see any issues after glancing at the statistics. However, upon seeing the hero's last name, the soldier abruptly got to his feet and apologized for his impolite behavior. Sally questioned the soldier because she didn't understand what was happening. In response, the soldier said that the individual seemed to have noble ancestry. Found it surprising that just by virtue of his last name, he was regarded as having noble blood. Now, when he brought this up, Sally and San introduced themselves. The hero initially believed that they were just saying their names, but it's possible that this was their entire name. It seems that only a noble was allowed to have a last name. With these ideas in mind, the hero used the analysis skill on the soldier and Sally. Took great care to ensure that, and the soldier named Guido had no last names because of their position. They had only names, he thought. The girl went up to and requested to check his status. His statics now resembled those of an average person after the man was able to eliminate any suspicious elements. After Sally replied that she didn't notice anything out of the ordinary, the shocked soldier took another look at the man's status, expressed regret for his error, and welcomed the hero to their city. The man grinned and believed he had used the analysis skill to conceal his last name. Now when gave him his data, he had to exercise more caution. The man was eventually taken to the branch of the Adventurers Guild. Sally repeated herself behind the administrative counter. She thanked the hero for his assistance in her role as administrator. According to his knowledge, he would receive a guild card upon registering as an adventurer, which he could use in lieu of his ID to complete guild quests and ask her questions. 3 silver coins would be needed for the registration fee. Agreed when the girl asked if he wanted to sign up as an adventurer. The hero realized that in order to survive in this world, he had to make money. The girl asked the man to touch the box she was holding. It served the same appraisal purpose as the gate. They could find out more specific details about him here. The administrator thanked after he touched the box. Sally's eyes suddenly widened as she turned to face the box. The girl quickly responded that everything was fine, but the guy thought something was wrong there. "I'll now explain the aspects of the guild card," she said, forcing a smile. Sally asked that you listen carefully because this was very important. She gave the guild card and declared that it was now his. His name, gender, and race were written on it from top to bottom with his rank shown below. G was the lowest rank and S was the highest. Starting at rank D and above, the guild-determined rank increases based on completed quests and monster defeat history. Although there are some exceptions, he also had to pass a guild test in order to get a rank boost. He may be demoted if the difficulty of a completed quest is less than his rank. His criminal history was listed in the 3rd line of the card, but the only word that could be there was bandit. A bandit is someone who commits an illegal act, such as stealing or murder. The 5th line contains the history of monsters vanquished, and the 4th line contains the history of quests finished. When a quest is finished, it instantly shows up on his card. The bandit will show up in the hero's history of vanquished monsters if he is vanquished. He won't turn into a bandit even if he unintentionally kills one in a mutually agreed-upon duel. Was surprised that there were duels here as well. The fact that the bandits were treated like monsters here also astounded the hero. Finally, because it was impossible to falsify the guild card, they were able to determine whether it was forged or not. Will be put to death if he attempts to forge even one card, so Sally advised him to exercise greater caution. The hero trembled. He found this to be quite frightening. These were all guild card explanations at the time. She wanted to know if had any questions. The girl replied that this was great and the hero understood everything. Turned into an adventurer now, Sally wished would never forget his guild membership responsibilities. With a smile, the hero urged everyone to believe this. He appreciated her thorough explanation. Walked out of the hall after Sally waved goodbye. The 2nd administrator approached Sally after giving the man a questioning glance. The worker grinned and remarked that it was uncommon to hear her name being called. Sally has finally found a good person after never having a man in her life due to her high expectations. After giving the girl a disgruntled look, Sally replied that it was none of her business and asked her to go back to work. The worker turned around and carried on with her work in silence. Sally blushed, thinking she was still correct, and she eventually located him. She felt a change in herself the moment she laid eyes on. He appeared to be from a different planet. He was also talented in martial arts and magic. She had never seen anything like that before. In addition to being her type, he paid attention to her dull explanation. Most significantly, her gut told her that was her fate. The 2nd girl called the girl who was obviously in the clouds because she wanted to make a request to Sally. The hero was now sleeping in the inn that the soldiers at the gate had suggested. For the cost, this room was excellent. Although he wasn't physically exhausted, the man lying on the bed felt as though he was extremely exhausted. Too many things happened today alone. Looking at his inventory, the man believed that he had only used his mind to call it forth. He had some grass in his inventory, but it was unclear how he got it. Even though everything went smoothly, he was certain that he could have died in the battle when he assisted others. The hero blamed his carelessness and believed that he should be more cautious going forward. There have been duels and bandits in this world. The hero pondered whether he could live in such a world for the rest of the evening. The sun began to shine behind the tall building roofs early the following morning. The man walked outside and stretched his arms up drowsily. It smelled pretty good here, he thought. In addition to the fact that he hadn't eaten since arriving, became hungry. The man smelled something delicious as he walked into the establishment. Before it could even open the doors, he was greeted by a lavish lace bust in front of him. He was their first customer today, the bust's owner exclaimed, assuming he had come in for breakfast. The presence of elf maids here startled the hero. The hero mumbled something at first, confused. Did the girls have a menu? He asked. The elves replied that everything they had was delicious and that the menu was on the table. The man sat at the table and stared at the elves all the time. He didn't think these were actually them. The hero could only hope for this world because there was nothing like it in the last one. After a while, all of his anxiety subsided. The blushing man thought he was going to love this world after seeing these short-made skirts. The hero left the establishment after enjoying a delicious breakfast. The guy decided it was time to go to the guild and take a few quests after the elf girls cheerfully bid him farewell. He needed to purchase the necessary equipment if he intended to explore the city's surroundings. Even though he could stay at the inn for a few nights with the money he had, it wouldn't last long, so he needed to make more. Initially, the hero was going to find the way to the guild, but he got lost in the city without warning. He turned into a few small, nearly empty alleys. The man said he was lost and paused to catch his breath. He appears to have wandered into an abandoned neighborhood. These locations appeared to be rather frightening. The hero realized that he would need to find out how to leave as quickly as possible. He apologized for the disruption and went into the first business he saw. Wanted to know how to leave this place. When a bearded, stern-looking man asked the man how he found out about this place, he was too busy to ask this question. The man, who turned out to be twice as short as the hero, looked very angry as the hero looked at him in fear. The guy thought it was a dwarf because of his short stature and bulky appearance. Replied that he only wanted to know the direction and that no one had told him about this location. The man turned away from the man after realizing everything. The dwarf responded angrily, saying that since this was a store selling weapons, he ought to leave if he had no interest in them. Was aware of this person's lack of friendliness, but he had an interest in weapons as well. The hero went up to the elderly man and mentioned that he was considering purchasing a weapon for himself. The dwarf inquired about the man's budget right away. In response, the hero stated that he currently possessed 1,300 taels. Today he was going to make a little more money. He couldn't even purchase a knife for himself with that much money. Had a talent for magic based on his movements, but the dwarf believed that this was all that possessed. The hero was astounded that the man could tell this from his actions alone. Claimed that he was in the forest and had no money when he woke up. He also lost his memory, but he was able to earn some cash in the process. What had happened to him was of no interest to the seller, however, believed the dwarf inquired about that. Nevertheless, the seller felt that he was stronger because he did not perish in the forest. The dwarf believed that a one-handed sword and shield should be his weapon after examining his physique. He had to pay the dwarf 10,000 and 5,000 for the shield if he wanted him to make him a one-handed sword. However, the smith requested that no one be told about this location. He didn't sell his possessions to people who couldn't use them. This, the irate seller claimed, was the sole explanation for his refusal to evict him. The hero appeared to have enough skill to pursue a career as a swordsman. Despite his rugged appearance, the man saw that the elderly man was compassionate. Believed that this was a basic dwarf characteristic. He grinned and promised to come back as soon as he had enough cash. The dwarf wished him luck and told him not to die out there before departing. Initially shut the door after leaving, but he later came back and inquired about the dwarf's route to the guild. Eventually made it to the branch of the Adventurers Guild. Sally and other administrators who seemed to be carrying a ton of paperwork met him there. The girl enthusiastically accepted the hero's request to take a few quests from them. "I'll explain everything to him along the way," she said, smiling. They went over to the quest board. He only had to bring a request from the quest board to Sally in order to accept a quest. However, he should only accept those that were appropriate for his position. He currently held the rank of G. He could work as a porter, general laborer, and herb gatherer. He could only take this at this point. The other explorers seemed to be drawn to Sally and kept glancing at her. The girl grinned and replied that this was excellent. The hero took one of the plaques and said he would go herb gathering. He had to collect the herb. This was a very significant herb that could be used as an anti-hemorrhagic agent after processing. Was free to leave after the explanation was finished. Sally requested that he bring her as much herb as he could find and promised to pay him 30 taels for each piece. Was taken aback by how inexpensive it was. It was not rare, he supposed. Although it grew sporadically, the herb was actually the most common. It was difficult to collect in large quantities because 90% of the surrounding grass was poisonous. It was inexpensive because most people brought herbs they had discovered by accident. Suddenly, the hero realized that he had something similar in the inventory, even though he understood everything. With these ideas, the hero pulled a twig of an unidentified plant from his inventory. When he questioned the girl about this herb, Sally said it was actually herb. The hero realized that the forest in which he was moved was home to this herb. There wouldn't be any monsters if one didn't venture too far into the forest. The man thought he already knew where to look and thanked her for the explanation. Eventually reached the forest and took a break after a while. For some reason, he searched everywhere but was unable to locate it. The hero thought there was grass all around, but all he discovered was one deadly. The man reasoned that he would take it for the future if the poison was potent. Consuming poisonous may result in stomach discomfort and diarrhea. However, with such an effect, people could only be exhausted at most. Realized that he was unable to apply his analysis at this point. Among these plants, he had no idea where to look for the herb. Closed his eyes and considered using a radar-like device. For a while, the man remained in that position on his knees. He then grinned and remarked that it wasn't good. Suddenly, a click caught his attention. Spotted an odd triangle-shaped icon next to a little patch of grass. He saw herb there when he got close, but it didn't respond. The hero believed he could locate the herb if he was close to it. If so, he had a plan already. As he ran farther into the forest, he noticed a lot of triangles, which indicated that there was an abundance of the herb he was looking for. Sally and the other administrators were taken aback when the man finally brought them a whole mountain of herb. According to Sally, he collected a lot and probably combined it with toxic. That's not the case, the man replied with a smile. Using his assessment, he concluded that all of the herbs were. Additionally, he fulfilled the request specifications, and each of these plants measured more than 15 centimeters in length. The fact that each one ended up being longer than 15 centimeters was advantageous to him. It must have expanded quickly. The girl requested to wait for a full minute while she inspected every herb. When Sally placed the herb in the magic box and saw its statistics, she was genuinely taken aback. It seems that all of this was actually herb. The girl questioned him about how he collected all 233 pieces and what he meant when he mentioned using appraisal. When she checked him, the girl declared that he lacked the appraisal skill. The man realized that he had made a small calculation error. He explained that he was referring to the way he evaluated it using his intuition. He was quite skilled at it. The girl yelled that she couldn't believe it and slapped the table loudly. He used his appraisal skill and she could clearly hear it. Perplexed, urged her to relax. The hero had to acknowledge that he possessed the appraisal skill. However, the skill was not visible on the status window, which is why he amassed such a large amount of money. This was too good, he thought, looking at the girl who was staring at him suspiciously. With a heavy sigh, the girl apologized for losing her head in shock. She gave the guy his 6,090 taels and never heard of skills that don't show up in the status window. The man thought it was close and sighed with relief. Asked for her forgiveness and thanked her for the reward. He left the guild after that, and Sally continued to find it quite puzzling. The hero heard the ringing and clanging of iron as soon as he arrived at the forge, apologized for the disruption and went inside. He claimed to have come to the dwarf to purchase a shield. The man shouted throughout the entire forge, believing he could not be heard. He was told to stop talking and wait for him by the dwarf. Thought he was being blown away by the dwarf's roar because it was so loud. he approached after spotting a sign in the corner on the right. This sign indicated that the blacksmith's name was. The dwarf intransigently carried on with his work while read the sign. Struck his a couple more times with great force, then slammed it into cold water. The dwarf sat down wearily on a chair as steam rose from the water. "I finally finished this thing," he said, glancing at the startled man. Remembered that the man had previously approached him and inquired about money. In response, the hero said he already had enough cash for a shield. One shield would also be helpful to him because he was a magician. The dwarf explained if he was truly capable of using magic, he could become a swordsman because of his talent for magic, but otherwise his hands would be occupied by a staff and a shield. The hero truly had a talent for magic, but he was unsure if he should use a staff. In response, said he had not yet encountered anyone with a magical talent who was staff-free. However, he was also capable of using magic without a staff. It would be difficult to focus on its actions in that situation. The magic will be slower than with a staff, even if it does work. Without a staff, magic was powerful, but it was pointless if he couldn't strike the adversary. Thus, the staff did nothing but speed up magic. Could hit a target with the speed of magic even if he didn't have a staff, but it would be amazing if he could increase the speed even further. Later on, the man considered purchasing a staff. Regardless, the dwarf requested that he refrain from. He witnessed the number of gifted individuals who perished due to negligence. The hero grinned and told himself that he was a good man. He needed a shield anyway. The dwarf suggested holding one of his inventions as he handed it to him. The elderly man had a grave expression. It appears that he found it too heavy, so it was worthwhile to try another. The hero realized that he was much more comfortable using the second shield. For comparison, the dwarf gave him another. He thought the hero would look good in this shield. Inquired about the man's viewpoint, exclaimed with delight that this shield looked fantastic. It seemed to become a natural part of him, was convinced that San truly was an expert in his field. The hero wants to discuss a sword with. The blacksmith thought the man had a request regarding a weapon. He misunderstood him, the man replied. The act of making a sword was all that interested him. He inquired about his hardening from the blacksmith. The dwarf initially misunderstood's query. The young man watched as the blacksmith dipped the blade of his sword into flaming coals to show off his craftsmanship. After the blow, the dwarf heated the blade at its request and then swiftly cooled it. Was surprised by his outcome. He felt the blade carefully and saw that it was warped in shape. This blade was probably also brittle. However, the dwarf's eyes glowed with pleasure and steam escaped from his nostrils as soon as he touched it. The blade came out so hard that he was shocked. Knew how it operated. Depending on how he tempered it, distortions can also be eliminated. However, the blacksmith was concerned that the sword was too stiff and would break easily. The man recommended heating it at a lower temperature in that scenario. He believed that the weapon would soften if it was cooled gradually. He was unsure of the precise temperature, though. The dwarf grinned approvingly, understanding everything. It sounded pretty intriguing, but he had no idea where the guy found out. Declared that he would now shut down his store. In order for the man to come back in 2 days, he wanted to test this. He promised to give the sword for free if he could make a good one. He led the startled man out and hurriedly shut the door behind him. The hero grinned and claimed that although his customer service had been a little lacking, he now believed that everything would be all right. The blacksmith appeared to be content. The following day arrived. The hero chose to investigate the adventurers in the city because he was intrigued by the staff discussion from yesterday. He needed to gather as much information as he could, but he really didn't want to use his appraisal on them. People here were, at most, level 30 in terms of status. The difference between the mana of a mage and that of another adventurer was surprisingly small. Their abilities were also not uncommon. No one was gifted in magic or martial arts here. While most mages have only one attribute, some adventurers have a level 1 or 2 swordsmanship skill. The only thing that caught the hero's attention when he looked at the shops was that they sold magic meat. It appears that there were no unique stores here. Could then purchase it for himself and sample the delicious green wolf bread. In this world, clothing was also unique. Oddly, it could be easily cleaned with a simple water rinse even if you are all in. It was very practical. However, still found that washing it himself was simpler and he was eager to take a bath. He really missed the old world because of its absence. After selecting the herb, the man entered it into the inventory. The man gazed up at the sky while adding the herb to the inventory. It was already beginning to grow dark, he realized. He spent too much time collecting herb and it was best to go home right away. A sudden movement from behind the bushes caused the man to turn sharply to the side. The man was attacked by a massive green wolf, but skillfully it. The hero thought he had just ventured too far into the forest and was shocked to see a green wolf here. The wolf had already landed on the ground after leaping. At the point of landing, the man believed he could shoot. Used fireball on the enemy after straightening his arm. The hero saw that two more of these wolves were approaching him as the fire sphere struck the target. The hero chose to simply enter the forest rather than confront them, but the wolves pursued him. Pulled out the shield as a precaution during his escape. He saw that the pack of wolves was encircling him from all sides as he ventured a little farther into the forest. The ferocious animals charged at them. With a raised hand, the hero employed fire magic. Bright flame blazed through the wolves. Heard a notification that his level had increased at this point, but 2 wolves remained. For some reason, the hero saw that there was only one beast in front of him when he turned to face the charging wolf. At first, was unable to locate the second opponent. The man saw the second wolf from above after hearing a sound above his head. The vicious animal struck his shield and attempted to use its teeth to gnaw through it. Grinned and turned to face the second wolf that was sprinting in his direction as the wolf foolishly attempted to breach the shield. He only needed to visualize and create it in order to use magic. He used an all-directed stone spear. With ruthless ferocity, his earth magic struck the adversary and sliced through its body. The helpless animal flew to the side as the spear broke to the sides. The beast initially landed upright. The pain bared its teeth. The hero sighed in relief as the wolf fell to the ground, and he realized that he had not paid enough attention. The wolf had approached him quite closely. Once more, was able to take the guild's adventurers by surprise when they saw his. The man brought them a bunch of herbs as usual. Sally let out a deep sigh and nearly drowned in it. A total of 697 herb stems were counted by the girl. She just didn't know what to say, but she had already learned to disregard common sense when it came to. It must have been a compliment, the hero hoped. The man was able to obtain 2,910 taels in total. The girl wanted to know if he actually collected it all day. The man thanked her for the reward and claimed that he was too preoccupied with collecting the herb to notice that he had gone too far and had been attacked by a pack of green wolves. When Sally heard about a pack of green wolves, she became alarmed and questioned if the man was truly all right. The hero replied that there were only 5 wolves and that he used magic to kill them. The girl thought it was fantastic that he used magic to kill them. Since groups of monsters could not be defeated by magic, Sally started to wonder how he killed them. In response, the hero merely their blows and used his shield to magically reflect them. Evidently, Sally found this difficult to accept. It wasn't easy, the girl realized. First, in order to cast magic, one had to focus and remain motionless for roughly 3 seconds. She believed that he wouldn't be able to focus if he used a shield to protect himself from them. Was taken aback upon learning of this, even though San had previously informed him of it. He was actually fine, which was the most important thing. Sally said she could call a mage for him if he needed a potion or a healing spell. The hero told her not to worry and that he was okay, but he found it amusing that there was a healing spell here as well. It was good, the guy thought. It would seem that he needed to learn more about this world's magic. His mana was restored in this world at a rate of 1 unit per minute. He had over 2,000 points in his mana pool. He was able to restore mana at a rate of over 2 units per minute as it turned out. He would be foolish to keep using cheap spells. He required powerful magic that could fend off multiple enemies' attacks simultaneously, as well as potentially healing spells to make up for his lack of perception. The man made the decision to learn magic. His objective would now be to use his abilities to become a mage swordsman. I could try my magic here, the guy thought when he came to the forest. In order to compensate for his current lack of terrain knowledge, he needed search-type magic. Imagining that he releases his magic outward was necessary, came to a stop in front of a tree. Imagining magical energy emanating from his hand was required. Additionally, had to visualize how it got to the tree across from him. The hero apparently succeeded, and his feelings were unexpected. At this moment, he could feel the trees bark. After deciding that he understood everything, tried to extend his radius. This time, he used his magic to cover the entire area. Mentally, it was incomprehensible. Trees, plants, animals, stones, and even birds were all palpable to him. Now a lot of information was being pumped directly into his brain. The hero cried out that he could no longer stand it and that it was not quite good. The man felt as though his head was about to blow up and fell to the ground, thinking that he could not use this in actual combat. He was being inundated with information that was overwhelming him. Because he did not specify what he was looking for, the hero assumed that this could only emerge. The hero resolved to focus and try again. This required dispersing his magical energy and filtering it using knowledge and analysis. Shut his eyes and focused on the closest radius. He now saw that magic's mode of manifestation had evolved on its own. He was presented with a window that resembled a circular map, but it only displayed the single item he was searching for within a specific range. So he will be successful if he places maps for searching various objects on top of each other. Was thrilled when everything came together. Using his skills, he was able to create a rudimentary radar for himself. Perception magic appears to have been the name given to this magic. There were 50 circular maps in total, with a current radius of up to 50 meters. Expanding the range would require mana. The radar could always be in operation because he had no maintenance expenses. Unlike the last time, he won't be ambushed now. The hero also recalled that San had promised to give him the sword when he completed it 3 days prior. After that, assumed he would go to him. He wanted to know about the hardening process as well. Immediately following his radar training, the hero made his way from the forest to his workshop. Yawned wearily and replied that his sword was already ready when the hero wished him a good day and inquired about it. Although charcoal iron, which was just released, is fairly strong, the blacksmith found that the iron he produced after hardening it was stronger than any other unique metal. He thought that the hardening process was simply amazing. By charcoal iron, the hero assumed he meant steel. This implies that wrought iron or a similar material might have been what he had previously used. After hardening, wrought iron would not exhibit any discernible changes in contrast to steel. Reminding that he had promised to give him the sword for free, the blacksmith gave him an alternative. Yesterday, he made it. Until he receives special rank B material, the hero could utilize this, one of his best creations. The hero took the sword in his hands and consented after the pleased blacksmith grinned and recommended trying to swing it. Despite his lack of sword-handling skills, he made an effort to grasp the weapon. The hero focused, gripped the blade tightly in his hands, and swung the blade fiercely forward. To his surprise, my body moved so easily, was first thought. Based on his swing, he didn't appear to be a novice. Before losing his memory, he must have been a swordsman, the blacksmith reasoned. The man could get stronger and was skilled with a sword. The hero grinned and believed that he was just amazing. His skill in martial arts was the reason for all of this. Asked the old man if he could actually handle the sword, telling him that it fit nicely in his hand. Given his improved ability to make swords, the blacksmith offered to accept it for a nominal fee. asked to share something with the man, telling him that he had taught him a secret technique. The blacksmith thought it was odd that the man could actually provide him with such unique technology. However, did not object if disseminated this method. Ultimately, methods were developed for their application. Anyway, now that he has learned this, won't get worse. With a sly smile said, these were words fit for a young man. If the man needs anything in the future, the blacksmith asked to be informed. Aside from that, the elderly man saw something in the individual. Was not a mage, he realized, but he never wore armor for some reason. The hero was so happy with his shield that he forgot all about it. Would like to purchase some light armor after the blacksmith brought this up to him. Something that wouldn't limit his movement was what he needed. The blacksmith suggested leather armor for him in that situation. Was acquainted with a master tanner, but he only worked with sheet metal armor. The blacksmith proposed to inform them that he was sent by. The guy found the presence of another master amusing. While traveling, the hero wanted to know if this master would resemble a gnome-like. After walked into a store and opened the doors, there was a loud ringing. It was there that a young girl greeted the novice adventurer with a smile. Her name, the hero assumed, was Clerk. In response, he said that San had suggested that he come here. If he needed armor, this was the best place to get it, the blacksmith said. San's recommendation seemed odd to the girl. She questioned if the man was truly a novice explorer. Her eyes suddenly shifted to his hands holding the hero's sword. To give the girl a better look, the man handed her the sword. Clerk knew right away that this sword belonged to San. She must have already noticed all these little details, the guy reasoned. Had no idea what she was going to do, but Clerk started searching for bits of leather. Clerk threw one of the tiny pieces of cloth he had found up in the air. It was completely unexpected to the man that Clerk would cut the cloth in half with his sword. It seems that this surprised the girl as well. His weapon, Clerk said, was very sharp. The guy believed the girl was insane because of the way she used his device. The hero also observed that nobody else was present here except for them. He had a wild idea as a result. This girl must have been the exact master San was referring to. With a smile, Clerk that the blacksmith was the one who had made this sword. However, she had never seen steel of that caliber before. Found the fact that this girl referred to herself with a masculine pronoun to be equally odd. The clerk handed him the weapon and explained that good armor is also necessary for a good sword. The hero asked about the materials available. She asked about the guy's preferred material. All he had to do was tell her, and she would take care of everything. Samples of leather were hanging on the wall, the girl indicated. She indicated garden leather as the first type of leather. It was reasonably priced at 15,000 taels, but it offered good protection. It was much easier to move with and was similar to metal armor. It was a favorite of Clerk's and had no notable flaws. She could have offered the hero green wolf leather if he had wanted a less expensive option, but it provided little protection and was flammable. She did not recommend it because a single blast of basic fire magic would ruin him. Instantly recalled the incident in which he set one of the wolves ablaze. Since Clerk had nothing else to offer, she figured the hero would naturally pick garden hide. Actually, the girl used only the materials provided by the customer to make the armor at first. The guy didn't understand why she said it with such pride because she didn't have the money to store expensive items because she primarily sold equipment for novice adventurers. His eyes moved to something intriguing in the area. He noticed some sort of armor at a small table and inquired about it. The clerk gave a hesitant response and an uneasy smile. In response, she said that it was light armor that was designed to automatically use protective magic by using the owner's mana without authorization. The majority of people can only use protective magic for 30 minutes before it reverts to its normal state because the mana consumption was higher than anticipated. Apparently found such a description of the armor interesting. According to the clerk, this is why the armor was used as a decoration in the store. The hero believed that this armor would be perfect for him, but it used mana to activate the protective mechanism. The man applied the appraisal skill to the armor to confirm his choice. The armor absorbed 20 mana points of the wearer per hour, according to what he read, and was a prototype for magical protective clothing. Its full potential was out of reach for regular adventurers, but his natural regeneration was still greater than the armor's consumption thanks to his mana. Wanted to know the cost as well as the protection it offered. Clerk pondered and concluded that she could sell it to him for the same price because it was just as durable as garden hide. The hero grinned and replied that he simply wanted to try it, but the clerk was worried that he truly wanted to buy it and did not advise him to do so. Should the situation worsen, he will purchase leather armor. When the clerk calmed down, she smiled and said that everything should be all right. The hero could arrive when the evening bell rings because the armor should be ready by tomorrow evening, according to the measurements that clerk took in that scenario. The man thanked her and acknowledged that he understood. Also thought clerk sold something other than armor. He was considering purchasing a staff member, which is the problem. In that case, the clerk replied he had to go to the store behind the next door. Just as they were finishing up their conversation, a door suddenly popped up in the wall. A girl wearing a wizard hat and holding a staff emerged from the open doors. She inquired as to whether they had called her when she entered. The clerk yelled at the person trying to enter her shop without permission. Since the girl believed that everything was good, she did not comprehend her grievances. All of this was rather unexpected too. Apparently, this girl was a true mage. She also appeared to be a fully trained mage. After introducing herself as the girl grinned at the man, was dressed in a long cloak, a wizard hat, and a corset. Assumed that the hero required a staff member. The clerk responded that San had reportedly suggested this location to him. Was taken aback to learn that was well known. The hero saw how attractive the sorceress was as she drew nearer to him. Then he should definitely visit her shop, said, taking him by the hand. Pulling the hero through the doors, she sold a wide range of goods. The clerk trailed them to store. As soon as they stepped inside, the hero was taken aback by how the establishment looked. The ceilings were extremely high and there was a spiral staircase that led upward. Lanterns were flying in this area, entwining with lovely hanging fabrics. The girl gestured toward the wall and suggested getting down to business, while was taken aback by the building's peculiar shape. Numerous staffs of various sizes and shapes were hanging on the walls, and the girl inquired as to what kind he preferred. With so many varieties, the hero was taken aback and inquired as to what the differences were. In general, the staff's magic speed increased with its length. Yet, the length of the staff was directly correlated with the control's difficulty. People selected the staff that they found most convenient. Typically, the length ranged from 60 to 120 centimeters. She took one of the staffs in her hands as discussed everything. She offered the man a 60-centimeter-long, slower version of a staff. Its speed will be 10 times increased when he applies magic. It is best used in dungeons because smaller areas like a dungeon won't require such a high speed. The hero understood what she was talking about. The guy then inquired as to whether she had a staff that increased speed by 3 times. Couldn't help but laugh when she saw such figures. Imagining such a staff, the girl claimed not to have one. In addition to being worthless because it couldn't hurt an adversary, it would only be 20 centimeters in size. Believed that triple acceleration would be sufficient because he knew that his magic was fairly quick even without a staff. Additionally, he required a staff that was small enough to not obstruct his path because he used a sword and shield. Once more, the girl could hardly contain her laughter when she discovered that the hero is armed with a sword and shield. Was so intrigued by that he offered to make him a staff, but it wouldn't be ready until tomorrow. She added that if it proves to be ineffective, she will not accept responsibility. Realized that his words sounded pretty weird, apparently. Additionally, Sally San previously stated that using magic required concentration. According to the hero, a magic swordsman is extremely uncommon in this world. However, would be pleased if could provide him with the staff he desires. The hero gazed at one of the staffs with curiosity, and a thought struck him. Just cutting this staff off by 20 centimeters seemed like a good idea to him. Burst out laughing at the sound of this. She fell to the ground, bending her knees because she found it so funny. Additionally, Clerk suppressed her stomach from giggling. According to staff members have distinct roles, so cutting it short would not be helpful. She was laughing so hard that she was unable to finish this sentence. Didn't comprehend anything, but it seemed to be common for people to not comprehend anything. The girl said that his equipment would be ready by tomorrow evening, while she continued to grip her stomach. The hero couldn't wait until tomorrow and asked to shorten it. Following his visit to the shop, the hero went to the guild and met Sally. Wishing him a good day, the girl inquired if the hero had any spare time. Her intention was to discuss his promotion. The herb and the green wolf case were other topics she wanted to discuss. Was promoted because his contribution was deemed adequate. He could be a cleaner, porter, nanny, or gatherer, for example, but in order to receive the first promotion, adventurers had to fulfill at least one of the standard requests because they needed different kinds of experience. The hero had to consider accepting one of the aforementioned tasks if he wished to advance. Went to the order board after realizing how all of this operated. The hero started searching for tasks that were within his rank G. Here, there were duties for moving cargo and cleaning up trash. The hero took what he preferred after making a quick decision. Grinning, he handed Sally a plaque with a task on it and said he would accept it. Sally grinned strainedly as she stared at the plaque and remarked that he had picked a rather odd task. The man selected rank G for iron ore transportation. There was a cap on the reward, which included 2 taels for each kilogram that was transported. Sally believed that this shouldn't be an issue because carrying iron ore was regarded as routine labor as well, but it wasn't as popular as collecting herb. Given the weight and distance required for this request, a more suitable task exists. Sally wanted to confirm that the hero was planning to take on this specific task. Although he had an inventory, the man believed that everything would be all right despite the fact that he had undertaken a quest that was clearly not worthwhile. Wished to inquire about the measurement of inventory capacity from the girl. Sally reasoned that this had to do with his maximum mana during the initial opening and his maximum mana when utilizing inventory. This implied that his initial mana points were proportionate to the number of slots he could have in the inventory. This explains why his inventory had 1,122 slots. When he opened the inventory, each slot had a capacity limit based on his maximum mana points. The hero started to wonder what weight he could add to his inventory. This request made him feel as though he had won the lottery. The man left after thanking Sally for the explanation. Around the same time, a small, fluffy animal with horns on its head was sleeping in a field nearby. A strange sound caused the animal, which resembled a small fox, to open one eye slightly. Was running past it at this point, huffing and letting out deep sighs, nearly stepping on the animal. In a desperate attempt to avoid being crushed, the animal just managed to jump to the side. Was currently running at 20 kilometers per hour. He would wager that he could beat those Olympic marathon runners with his speed. Leveling up allowed him to run without getting out of breath. Could run in that manner all day, but he had no desire to do so. Finally, he saw a village nearby, which he was racing to. Went up to the first resident he saw and expressed regret. He claimed to have come here to fulfill a guild request. The man, who was carrying a heavy bag, asked to present his guild card. The man looked at the card and thought it seemed plausible. Then he took to a whole pile of iron ore and asked him to carry as much of it as he could. The man was concerned about his weak frame while the hero marveled at the mountains of iron ore. He hoped that everything would be all right with this explorer. In shock and surprise, the worker opened his mouth to the rising music. Climbing the iron ore mountains, the hero started. The man inquired as to how much he could currently add to his inventory. According to, he could load roughly 1,500 kilograms there. The man could only carry up to 200 kilograms, so it was difficult for him to have such a large inventory. Apparently, the heroes turned out to be more capacious than others, but was aware of the standard for inventories here. Even how much more he could contribute was unknown to him. According to the man, they would be appreciative if he continued to assist in the future with the transportation of iron ore because they were lacking carriers for various reasons. Though he was unsure of his duration in this city, would be happy to assist them. As the hero loaded 2,012 kilograms of ore into his inventory, he believed that his stock was full. In response, the man said it was a lot. However, it seemed odd to the man that the hero could still collect it after filling out the inventory. The hero replied that he still had over 1,000 slots available and that this was just one of his full slots. The man paled at the sound of this and began to perspire icily. The man believed the hero to be a chest or something similar, but would prefer to be a regular person. After a while, the smeltery began to make noise. The boss was asked to look at this by one of the employees. The boss came over to inquire about the cause of the noise since he could not understand why it had gotten so bad. The boss was among those who gaped in astonishment and could not believe what they were seeing. The hero pulled 10 tons of iron ore from his stock for them and set it in a massive brick barrel close to the workers. "Our storage is full," the boss cried out. He had a hard time imagining how many trips he made. The hero grinned and claimed to have completed everything at once. He actually had a lot more to bring, but he was apprehended after filling the 5th slot. According to the man, they won't have any storage space later if he takes more. For the time being, they won't need to make a new request if they already have that sum. Ultimately, the hero just lost a good request on the first day. He was ranked F at the conclusion of the guild appraisal. Though he didn't want to worry about it, he believed Sally had said something about him. Upon first reading the report, Sally was perplexed as to how the man was able to move up to 10 tons. The following day, the man visited the store to greet his employees, saw it and felt it was a perfect fit for him, however, thought that there would be no way to use this short staff. The hero thanked her for the staff in spite of her opinion. "That would be more than sufficient," he said. Everything was ready, the hero declared, throwing a wide cloak over his shoulders and donning the new gear. Still trying not to laugh, gave the man a small stick which took to be a staff. Instead of looking like a staff, it resembled a pointer stick. The girl couldn't help but laugh when the hero said it looked pretty cute. The hero ran toward the forest after completing all the affairs. Now that he was completely, it was time to put it to the test in combat. He would venture far into the forest. He stopped suddenly after seeing a lot of dots with his radar. There was something ahead when the radar made its sound. Peered intently and saw a massive pack of green wolves in the forest. The hero counted 300 or even 500 of them because they were so numerous. Because there were too many, was concerned that he might not be able to handle them. However, if he attempts to flee and they spot him, he might unintentionally guide them into the city. It seems that the man was forced to engage in combat. He was already observed by a number of wolves when he opened multiple bottles of potions. The man took an acceleration potion for mana regeneration. The magic shop is already covered in dust from this potion. It tenfold speeds up the restoration of natural mana for 3 hours. For this item was valuable, but it was worthless to regular mages. He pulled a sword and a shield from his inventory while thinking these things. He could already see the massive pack of wolves charging at him. The man employed earth magic and lifted his shield in the direction of the wolves. He produced a large number of arrow-like stone spears in a matter of seconds. Even though his spears injured some wolves, others were able to avoid his strikes. The man was relieved that it actually did work. He discovered 5 things about magic through his research. Although he could channel up to 10 units of mana per second into his magic, he could do so in order to increase its firepower. The area of effect will not tenfold increase even if 10 times as much mana is directed into it. Just had to use a lot of spells to defeat a number of monsters. Using fire magic, the man produced his small staff that resembled a wand. He called forth a large number of fire spheres using fire magic. As they got closer to the wolf pack, the fire spheres started to burst into a huge explosion. Their bodies started to burn as the wolves let out a scream. As a result, managed to handle a few small animals. He threw stone spears at the other members of the pack. While running toward him, the green wolves managed to avoid the swift attacks. As they approached, the hero brandished his sword. The shield and sword were still flying toward the wolves, as were stone spears and fire spheres. Was jumped at by 3 wolves who were about to bite him. However, the sphere-shaped stone spears knocked the adversaries off their feet, and the hero used the sharp sword to finish the wolves. Finally, after a while, everything became quiet. The green, thick-headed wolves were exactly what the hero had anticipated. They all came at him head-on, he said, sitting on a small stone surrounded by mountains of dead beast bodies. Only 3 minutes elapsed during his entire battle, but they were worthwhile. Dabbed at a scrape on his cheek, wiping the blood away. He improved his skills, so his time was not wasted. In addition to his otherworldly status, he now possessed information analysis skills, full mastery, otherworldly language, and the ability to perform all forms of magic and martial arts. He advanced to the 3rd level of fire, water, earth, perception, pressure, and restoration magic. Continued to think that there were plenty of these wolves. Up to 513 were vanquished by him, and he believed that green wolves congregated in rather sizable packs. After giving this some thought, the man stood up and decided it didn't matter. All he had to do was go back and let Sally San know about this. But he had to gather all these bodies before he could go back. A few more terrified wolves were running alongside a boar somewhere in the middle of the forest while the hero was going about his own business. A massive clawed paw emerged from the dense undergrowth, followed by the appearance of a spiked tail. This creature's massive armored tail could topple a tree with a single swing. Its entire body was covered in solid spiked armor, and based just on appearance, it was incredibly strong and aggressive. When Sally learned that the hero had killed up to 513 green wolves, a chill went through her body. She was also perplexed as to where he could locate such a quantity. After 15 minutes of searching the forest, the hero responded that he had located them. He thought it was an odd occurrence. According to the girl, green wolves typically did not congregate in such sizable packs. 500 individuals were not the norm, but 100 in a pack was. This implies that was either genuinely fortunate or just unlucky. They gave him a good deal of experience. Sally was relieved that came back unharmed, but she was concerned about this circumstance. She recommended that he sell the green wolf corpses in one form or another. The hero agreed to 100 pieces, and she could purchase about 100. The hero later wished the blacksmith a good day when he stopped by. He requested that his sword and shield be examined. With pleasure, asked him to present the weapon. It took the blacksmith only a few seconds to assess the blade's condition. He saw that the man hunted green wolves, and it appeared that he did so for longer than 2 days. Was asked to elaborate by the hero. He could tell that green wolves were responsible for the scratches on his shield. The blacksmith also noticed that the hero killed a lot of monsters with his sword, and it appeared as though he had not felled any of their hundreds. Did not believe was capable of such a feat when he first saw him. In the meantime, the hero pondered the greatness of blacksmiths. Believed that because his status rose, he was using the sword correctly. The blacksmith pointed out that even if his standing rose, he did not believe would be able to wield the sword more skillfully. After a while of waiting for the blacksmith, declared that everything was prepared. The man was appreciative of his labor. In response, the blacksmith said that his shield was still in good condition, so he only fixed the sword. The blacksmith asked that it be handled more carefully and still recommended that it be replaced. Was unable to interpret its meaning. His sword might have been powerful, but it was still made of iron. Compared to a sword made of a rare monster's metal or a special metal, it was far weaker. Given his abilities, the man ought to carry an extra sword. After realizing everything, the hero thought of rare monsters and their materials, like dragons. If he wanted to purchase a dragon sword, the man inquired about the cost, retorted that it would cost at least 4 billion taels if it were a dragon sword. When he heard this price, the man was taken aback. Dragons only have 5 body parts that can be used to make a sword, retorted. In addition, the dragons themselves were so uncommon that they were regarded as legendary. To be honest, the blacksmith thought that these things could not be valued by the hero. The world would descend into chaos and some nations would be destroyed if he showed up. The hero was taken aback by the strength of dragons and asked what kind of material he should use since, to the best of his knowledge, dragon material could not be obtained. It would be a sword fashioned from iron lizard metal if he valued sharpness. The hero asked for more details because he was unsure of who it was. A big lizard covered in hard metal was a B-rank monster, the blacksmith retorted. A bloody massacre would ensue if a single lizard appeared in a small town with a few mages like this. The metal covering the skin is what they need for a sword, but it is incredibly strong and regular swordsmen have no chance against these creatures. It would cost $5 million if the hero wanted the blacksmith to create a sword out of this material. Additionally, metallic lizards outperformed dragons in terms of physical resistance. Found it hard to believe that lizards were so powerful, but he didn't care because he couldn't find them anyhow. It will be a long time before he hunts them, even if he does. The hero found out the following day that the guild was, for some reason, closed, and a large crowd had gathered close to the entrance. They had an emergency incident, according to the sign at the entrance. The forest gate was to be approached by any adventurer who could fight. Dispersed to various sides, people talked about this peculiar circumstance. Nobody knew what was going on, and everyone was anxious. The hero asked Sally San about the emergency incident after spotting her in the crowd. The girl stated that they decided to send a number of adventurers for reconnaissance after he informed them about the green wolves yesterday. They found a horde of monsters coming this way. They were appreciative of because he gave them time to prepare. To the best of the hero's knowledge, they were assembling adventurers to battle the impending monsters. From the sound of her voice, it sounded like a big gang of monsters. The city would have been destroyed in an unexpected invasion, so it was fortunate that they discovered them early. Believed that they only needed to defend the gates and that the conflict would be straightforward defensive. That isn't true, the girl said. The presence of which are renowned for having a high penetration power was, the hero could assist on the front line and destroy as many of the walls as possible because if they only guard the gates, the walls will be destroyed. Naturally, there will be rewards for every participant. They could let the beginners use the gates in the interim. Sally wanted him on the front line but retorted that he was a novice. He was probably one of the most powerful adventurers in the city, but Sally meant that he was a novice because he had only recently started being an adventurer. They are merely a weak branch of the guild because there are only weak monsters around them. Sally volunteered to stand on the front lines and assist them, was shocked to discover how weak this guild branch was. The hero believed that nothing could be done because he understood everything. Sally thanked him for the assistance and was ecstatic that he had agreed. Sally asked him to exercise greater caution because he would be one of the most powerful pillars bolstering their plan. Sally was informed by a number of adventurers that they were already prepared. The girl asked to accompany to the front line after realizing everything. Had already hurried off toward the forest before she could turn around and say it. He was confusedly cared for by the adventurers and Sally. In addition to asking him to join the front line, they also asked him to avoid getting wounded. That request was not feasible at all. It probably meant Sally had high expectations of him. However, the hero already had a strong bond with this city. In addition, it was an excellent opportunity to obtain experience. Rushed forward, confident that he would prevent the city's invasion. He consumed a mana recovery acceleration potion, but his mana was still finite. He could only endure for roughly 20 minutes if he exerted all of his current mana. The hero saw numerous dots on the radar when he was deep within the forest. A sizable pack of green wolves was directly in front of him. With their teeth bared, the wolves launched an assault, reached for his sword and shield. The hero believed he would kill the monsters within a sword swing when he ran into a frontal attack. Then he would use his magic to launch stone arrows at them. A number of green wolves were nailed to the trees with the aid of stone arrows. The hero received a notification that leveling up had increased his damage, thought he could pull it off. As if out of nowhere, a huge boar charged at the man who was occupied with the green wolves. When the man saw his enormous tusks, he realized it was a boar. Pulled out his little staff without becoming confused. Using a stone spear and a small stick, he struck the boar, stopping it with a crash. The boar threw up its head and screamed in agony. The injured wild animal grew even more irate and threatened to run over. Was astounded that this enormous boar continued. The boar hit the man with its tusks, causing to fall to the ground. The monster's dash allowed the hero to comprehend exactly what Sally was referring to. On the boar, he applied appraisal. This enormous boar was referred to as despite lacking mana, it possessed 3,500 health points. Rather than mana, it possessed 250 strength points. It only needed 7 stone spears to drop its health by 30%, as the hero believed. He could kill up to 10 green wolves with this quantity. By the way, the monster halted as the eyes started to roll upward. The enormous monster fell to the ground at a fallen tree for an unknown reason. Now that its health was at 0, the man believed he had won. He found it surprising because, from what he recalled, he had not wounded it fatally. But it was the only explanation, since 70% of its health suddenly disappeared. It now meant nothing to the hero. He loaded the carcass of the enormous boar into his inventory because he was more interested in the movement of monsters. Everyone appeared to be running straight, in contrast to the green wolves he had encountered a few days prior. Despite his limited understanding of monster behavior, he had the impression that they were fleeing from something. He could see why they were acting that way if he went there. Squatted low, lifted himself off the ground, and leaped skyward. He noticed a tiny forest clearing with lots of animals running along it above the treetops. Along with other animal species, there were the same boars and green wolves. The hero took a brief look at the monsters' actions. They were in a hurry, which was a clear sign that something was frightening and worrying them. They appeared to be fleeing something, thought. The man saw an odd movement in the distance, but these were no longer beasts. One of the wolves was easily crushed by the enormous clawed paw that emerged from the forest thicket. Was able to read the creature's name because of his appraisal skills. The very iron lizard was standing in front of him. 1,200 strength points and 2,800 health points were its attributes. Finally came across this creature. That's the same iron lizard Sand spoke of. Although it had less health than its armor probably made it harder to harm. Deduced that its presence was the reason why all monsters were fleeing. In any event, the hero did not believe that fighting by himself would be wise. He needed to go back and tell the guild about this. Before he could consider it, he became aware of the predator's lethal stare. With a thunderous roar, the lizard swung its massive maw open and charged at. Not only had he been located, but this lizard was rapidly catching up to him. Was unsure if he could flee from the creature because the hero realized that its speed was greater than his own. The lizard was catching up to the man as he attempted to push off a tree and advance. Still thought that retreating was the only choice. Because of its extremely durable armor, the lizard was referred to as the killer of swordsmen because it was unlikely to be harmed by any physical force or stone spear. The man pulled out his little wand staff after realizing this. At the moment, he could only use 10 mana points per second to increase the power of his magic. The hero attempted to channel it for a minute during the escape. At some point, the hero turned toward the lizard and used an attack with a large fireball. The lizard that was pursuing him was struck squarely by a strong stream of fire. It appears that this creature survived the stream of fire. His sight astounded the hero. He was about to be bitten by the steel lizard, but was able to climb up. He saw that the steel lizard's massive, spiked tail was already catching him in the air. The hero had no choice but to try to withstand the blow. In a single motion, the lizard's steel tail threw the man aside and toppled an entire tree. Was flung with such force that his body slid several tens of meters as the tree fell to the ground. The lizard broke the bone even though it only touched his left leg. The fact that he had already mastered healing magic and could assist himself pleased the hero. However, he was still unable to let his guard down. A direct hit would instantly kill him, and if he lost consciousness, it would be his last moment. The man could not, under any circumstances, let this monster into the city, keeping in mind his friends and acquaintances. "I would definitely kill it," the man said, gritting his teeth. He was forced to create new magic, such as earth magic, because he lacked any piercing effect magic, was the one who thought of using lightning magic. For some reason, the man's magic does not work even though he pointed his shielded wand at the enemy. Perhaps embodying unusual imagination came with additional requirements. With a heavy sigh of agony, the hero narrowly avoided the lizard's blow. The man realized his predicament was dire when the lizard attempted to crush him with its enormous clawed paws. He was powerless with his current magic. The hero then observed the lizard's movements and examined its paws. He believed he still had a choice. In contrast to sword fighting, the power of magic could be increased through accumulation. The hero learned that tanks use this projectile to increase penetration. They don't have to launch a projectile with a lot of explosive power. Instead, it needs to be quick and apply pressure to get through hard armor. The iron lizard resembled a tank in certain ways, and the only way to get through its tough armor is to use magic that he has learned throughout his training. This magic, which was already at the 3rd level, was known as pressure magic. The man believed it would be a gamble from this point on. He intended to use every last one of his remaining 9,000 mana points in this magic, put the staff and sword back in the inventory, leaving the shield alone. He had to wait around 15 minutes for the next attack. The hero could easily avoid the lizard's swift attack because he was aware of its behavior. However, he must also remember the tail attack. He reasoned that by reading its movement with his martial arts talent, he could determine which way the lizard would swing its tail. Even though the hero knew he could block the blow, the pain was still excruciating. The man's preparation was finished after he lasted for 15 minutes. Thought he just needed to pick a weak spot on the enemy's armor and rushed at the enormous lizard without hesitation. He should probably hit where they don't often hit. Aiming for the lizard's back, the hero leaped above its head. The monster only succeeded in raising its head, obviously unprepared for such a move. To taste his complete attack, the hero offered it. In his hands, a magical sphere started to grow larger and larger. This ball became an instant shot, was able to pin the enormous lizard to the ground by using pressure magic. The lizard let out a loud scream as it opened its maw, was terrified by its cries, but he wished for his success. The monster lay on its belly as a number of spiked pieces on its back cracked. The hero moved aside, believing he had succeeded. His frightened gaze met the feral gaze of this monster. As it turned out, the lizard's back was punctured by the man's blow, causing it to fall to the ground lifeless. When his system sent a notification, the battered hero heard it. The man grinned and claimed that he had defeated it by himself, not believing his eyes. The radar was quiet, but the hero looked around and went back to the city as a precaution. It appears that every monster under the Iron Lizard's command fled. Wished for the safety of Sally, San, and the others. Across the entire field, the girl called out to him, and the hero saw her and ran toward him. She was relieved he was still alive. Didn't understand her decision to declare him dead. The girl tried to catch her breath as she ran up to him. Since he hurried forward, they concluded that he was dead. He was nowhere to be found, and the monsters had already vanished. Sally was so concerned about him that she asked where he had been, barely able to contain her tears. The hero had no idea that one adventurer could make her feel so strongly. Apologized in response. However, she had previously instructed him to go to the front line and take down as many monsters as he could. Sally intended for him to fight off the monsters alongside the others on the front line. She didn't request that he kill himself. The hero now realized what she truly meant when he made an effort to recall this. Sally inhaled deeply in an attempt to relax. When the monsters, she questioned what he was doing. The man replied that after coming across the iron lizard, he was surveying his surroundings. Sally was shocked by what she heard and inquired about the lizard once more. "This is bad," the girl said, flitting from side to side. This needed to be communicated to the other mages, but they needed to call for reinforcements because there were only 5 mages in the city. Since he vanquished it, the hero urged her not to worry about it. Informed Sally that he had vanquished the iron lizard, but Sally believed she had misheard. Believed that because he had killed it, the monsters had backed off. Surprised, Sally gazed at the man. The girl regained consciousness and acknowledged that she had forgotten he was a sword-wielding mage. In that instance, nothing about it was unexpected. Sally was wrong to believe that the hero employed wind magic. Iron lizards are usually defeated by a group of S-level or higher mages, who then use wind magic to lift the creature into the air and use fire magic to burn its insides, avoiding the armor. She asked the man a question because she was interested in how he had defeated the iron lizard. In response, the hero said he just took it and used magic to pierce its armor. Maybe he thought the armor of the iron lizard he had battled was weaker. Naturally, Sally didn't trust what he said. The hero's ability to pierce the iron lizard's armor astounded her. The man recommended that we examine its corpse, which was in his inventory. When the enormous monster carcass fell directly in front of the girl, she leaped into position. She couldn't have imagined inventory size after seeing this enormous lizard. In response, the hero said his inventory was bigger than others. Without a doubt, Sally recognized it as an iron lizard. She decided to check it since she understood that the hole should be on the back. Unexpectedly took the girl in his arms and volunteered to assist her. Unable to comprehend what he was doing, Sally flushed. The hero told her that the hole was here while silently lifting her onto the lizard's carcass. The hero apologized after the blushing Sally begged him to let her go first. "It was just astounding," Sally said. She had never heard of any magic that could make such a large hole. As a result, she was certain that the hero's magic must be essentially distinct from their own. In any event, she expressed her gratitude to him for destroying the iron lizard and promised to inform the branch head of this, acknowledged their mutual understanding and promised to see them later. Since he had to accompany her, Sally was unable to understand what he was talking about. What she meant was unclear too. After some time, the hero and Sally reached the branch. The branch head yelled that was guilty in front of him and started pounding his head on the table as soon as he saw him. The hero was perplexed and had no idea what was happening. He knew that this man was in charge of the branch, but he had no idea what was going on. Beckoned him to look up. The problem was that they had been aware of the monster's suspicious behavior for a while. This indicated the appearance of a formidable monster, but the head did nothing. The head felt that he was solely to blame for this occurrence. Many people would have perished if the hero hadn't been present. He thanked him for the assistance on behalf of this guild. Himself recognized the difficulty of defeating the iron lizard. However, it's likely that their branch lacked the funds necessary to address this issue. Since the hero was unsure whether a strong monster had materialized, they reasoned that there was nothing they could do in this situation. The head got up and acknowledged that he felt extremely ashamed in front of the hero, who was not only strong but also compassionate. In case it was still feasible, the branch head would like to request a favor from. The man requested that the iron lizard case remain confidential. The hero didn't know what that meant, but he didn't want to be confusing. Even so, the guild would eventually make a public announcement. The city was stirred up by mere rumors of the appearance of an iron lizard. The head was afraid that no one would believe them even if they declared that an adventurer had defeated it. Instead, it would only make them more perplexed. This was merely a request, of course, and the hero was free to keep the body for himself. Consented to keep it a secret even though the branch head said he could make the announcement at its request. The hero believed that if he couldn't tell anyone about it, it would become an issue. He requested authorization to discuss it with San alone. The problem was that he intended to use the iron lizard to create a weapon. The fact that the hero knew that elderly man startled the head, he knew how to keep secrets and didn't often interact with people, so it shouldn't be an issue. However, the head thought they would have to search other cities for the iron lizard because they lacked the necessary equipment to process it. If he goes from here to the southeast, he will meet a mining city of dwarves, the man said, pointing toward the window overlooking the mountains. This was something that was possible with the equipment. Was the name of a smithing town. The hero knew he would have to get out of this city. However, the man chose to go there because are the monsters that reside here. It appears that moving at night and sleeping at noon are the best times to travel in this world. He made the decision to bid farewell to those who had assisted him because he still had time before leaving. Seemingly anticipating the hero's journey, bid him farewell with a smile. After that, the man approached Sally in the guild and wished her a happy day. He claimed to have brought some herb with them. The girl asked the hero a question while casting a doubtful glance at him. She felt that something had happened to the branch's head for some reason. After responding that there was nothing noteworthy in the city, the hero made the decision to depart. When Sally heard this, she was taken aback and unable to speak. The man promised to go too and make a new weapon for himself. In addition, he thought that adventurers frequently traveled and that this was a perfectly normal occurrence. Sally sadly lowered her gaze, unable to comprehend that the hero would depart for another city. However, asked her not to worry about it while grinning at her. He responded that the iron lizard was the cause of the high number of green wolves and that since he had already vanquished it, there would be none more. Even without him, this city ought to be secure now. Sally looked down once more and gave a sorrowful smile. In response, the girl said she understood everything. She asked to wait a bit, remembering that he wanted to sell her the herb. The hero recalled their encounter. When you consider it, he was extremely fortunate to have met someone as kind as Sally San when he first entered this world. The hero hopes that one day she will fulfill his quest once more. The man thanked her for everything and gave her another bundle. Gave her a smile and expressed the hope that they would be able to meet again in the future. The girl agreed with him and took his herb. With a genuine smile, she proposed that we meet again. The man then embarked on his adventure. 5 days had passed since leaving the city, was strolling through the forest on a mountain path when he glanced at the radar. He had heard that a horse ride from Tu would take roughly 10 days. The hero believed it to be the city of after spotting some buildings in the distance. It would take him approximately an hour to get there based on the distance. That he arrived twice as quickly as a horse was unthinkable to him. Figured his leveling was the reason. The hero saw multiple people on it when the radar signal beeped. Even though there was a road here, they were still walking through the forest. These silhouettes were recognizable, was already speculating about their identities. There was dead silence as the man turned toward the dark forest thicket. In those locations, the light hardly penetrated the dense tree cover. Approached slightly and hid behind a tree. He saw a child in a binding and several others in armor. Sally had previously claimed that sinners were referred to as bandits. Upon observing the shackled child, the hero was convinced that they were indeed those individuals. They advised an adventurer to notify the guild if he encounters them. They must be killed or apprehended if at all possible. The hero realized that these individuals had abducted a child from. Chose to make sure they were indeed bandits just in case, but something had to be done first. Using his appraisal skills, the man noticed a window in front of them that these individuals' status. All 6 of them were, as he believed, bandits. Believed that he would be fighting people for the first time. When one of the bandits asked his friend where he was going, he replied that he was going to the restroom. The rest of the group heard a noise, and one of them moved away. Where it was coming from was beyond their comprehension. Two men were ordered by the gang leader to go check it. Armed with their weapons, the bandits ventured farther into the forest. They saw the hero's single stone arrow ahead, but they had no idea what it was. Meanwhile, surreptitiously observed them from a nearby tree's branch. The man made the quick decision to attack them. The bandits didn't even have time to turn around and comprehend what was going on. Materialized directly in front of them and applied pressure magic to the adversaries. The individuals fell to the ground after the man struck them in the stomach. The other bandits saw that someone was coming at them very quickly. The gang leader asked the man who he was after giving him a startled look. Ultimately, the hero dealt with them in silence and instantly eliminated all of his opponents. Even though he weakened his magic, still felt that it was too powerful to capture them. He did not feel any regret for killing these people for whatever reason. This was good, he thought, because this world was dangerous unlike his, that did not cause him to experience guilt. Now something else was more crucial. With these ideas in mind, the man went up to the prisoner and examined her condition. According to the health condition, the captive was under forced hypnosis. Despite applying his abilities, the hero was still unable to comprehend what forced hypnosis was. He rushed to the city in the hopes that it might be in some way. The hero soon arrived at the city gates and expressed regret to the guards. The sight of the prisoner in his arms startled the guards. A short but burly man was standing close to the soldiers, and he rushed at him. He insulted the hero and called out to his daughter. He concluded that she had been abducted by the hero. The guy treated him suspiciously after realizing right away that this was the girl's father. Attempted to clarify that not everything appeared as he had anticipated. The hero appeared and told her that he had just rescued her from robbers in the forest nearby. She appeared to be under forced hypnosis. The guards' faces lit up with relief. If so, they requested that it be left to them. Herbs were an easy way to cure forced hypnosis. After thanking the hero for saving, one of the guards offered to take her away. The father spoke to his daughter frequently in an attempt to check on her well-being. San was asked to calm down by one of the guards. Since his daughter had gone into the forest in the morning and never come back, the guard begged forgiveness. He worried about her a lot. Dwarves were also extremely irritable on their own. The father let out a sigh of relief and expressed regret to the man for yelling at him. The man thanked him for saving his daughter and identified himself as he thought the man was a nomadic explorer. He promised to do everything in his power to assist the man in the city if he needed anything. The hero was appreciative of the offer. If so, he requested to be taken to the store where the iron lizard could be processed. Taking hold of his hand, the dwarf dragged him forward. He asked to join them and suggested that they celebrate this for the time being. The guys followed the dwarf to a place where a sumptuous table was prepared in honor of his return. The man believed the dwarf was not paying any attention to him. That wasn't shocking, though, because his daughter who had been abducted had returned at last. Nevertheless, the hero was able to observe that a large number of the tools in this area appeared to have come from San's workshop. He started to make some guesses. A girl approached the hero while he was drinking and inquired as to whether he was. The person who finally regained consciousness turned out to be the dwarf's daughter. She thanked the man for her and introduced herself as, however, she had no recollection of anything that had happened to her. The hero wasn't sure she should return to work right away after such an adventure. Clutching her fist, declared that she was now okay because of him. The hero's adventurous appearance had already led her to believe that he was a nomad. She apologized for forcing him to halt his journey. S retorted that since he was really going to this city, it was not her fault. He had heard that the iron lizard could be processed using their technology. He could utilize this workshop if the girl was correct in assuming that he required a weapon. It was still a workshop, as the hero had previously surmised. The man inquired about the cost and thanked you for the offer. As they were speaking, his father came over to them. If it was a sword, could trust him, he said, lifting his drink-filled mug, but it would cost him $1 million to make it from an iron lizard. The hero was taken aback by the high price. However, the dwarf promised to give him a 50% discount in appreciation for saving his daughter. The man exclaimed that it wasn't required because he was willing to pay the full amount. But all of a sudden, the hero realized that he was short on cash. He currently only had 100,000 taels. The man claimed to have an iron lizard's corpse with him and believed he could sell them materials. Believed the hero had uttered a failed joke and was unable to comprehend how he could possess an iron lizard corpse. Her father believed that the hero was genuinely insane. It would be simpler to show it, he explained, but it was in his inventory. When the dwarves saw this, their faces contorted in disbelief. You could go crazy, but this guy actually had an actual iron lizard corpse. The girl assumed had a huge inventory because she couldn't understand how something so large could fit into one. He explained that he had a lot more inventory than normal. He experienced since Sally experienced the same thing. The others were asked to report this to accounting by his father. Their accounting expert attested to the monster's complete preservation of quality. Naturally, they couldn't set a price until the metal was taken out of the body. The man hoped it would work for the hero and offered to buy it for 3 million taels per kilogram. He was unable to purchase everything at once, but he could reassure that his offer was more lucrative than the guild's. Naturally, the hero accepted this. The fact that he could learn so much from an iron lizard's corpse astounded him. The matter is in the bag, the dwarf said, clapping his hands. He advised quitting drinking and starting work. He inquired if was capable of using fire magic. Asked him for assistance when it came time to butcher the iron lizard. The hero had no idea that he would have to participate in it as well. According to his understanding, he needed to burn the iron lizard's insides using his fire magic. The dwarves had to burn it from the inside, leaving only the metal since they were unable to butcher it. He could easily get half a ton of metal based on the size. The hero found it difficult to visualize such enormous amounts. Thought the hero possessed incredible magical abilities. It was comparable to B-rank magic in terms of power and rate of fire. If the dwarf found out that was the only one who could defeat this lizard, he would not be shocked. He didn't see why the hero even required a sword. He had to be ready for close combat because he was a loner, the hero explained. Additionally, he possessed a 20-centimeter staff that was inconspicuous during combat. Had never heard of such a style before. Besides, a staff of 20 centimeters was not very big. He wondered what kind of material it was composed of. The man clarified that he purchased it from a store in. Since this works well for novices, it was probably constructed with an iron core and copper skin. He could purchase a staff that casts much more quickly if he had money. The hero questioned whether the staff's materials could have any effect on magic's speed. Additionally, he wants to request that the dwarf fashion an iron lizard into a staff for him. Responded positively but cautioned that it would require some time. The truth was that this creature's metal was extremely hard and processing it would require a unique technique. Additionally, he would require a different strategy because staffs and swords had different structures. In any event, it would be better for to speak with if he was interested in hiring staff. They were the best in the city thanks to. The man thanked him for the advice and acknowledged that his daughter had already made staffs. Afterwards, the hero asked the girl if she could use iron lizard material to make him a staff. Asked if he was truly certain about it and retorted that it would be a very opulent staff. If at all possible, he would require a 20-centimeter staff that had spell acceleration, similar to a regular staff. The girl responded that this was not feasible and believed that the hero was undoubtedly ignorant of staff construction. Thought she could teach him this even though he didn't understand it. In addition, claimed to have created the best staff in. The girl grinned and said she would teach him, blushing from the praise. She urged him to pay attention. The girl discussed the fundamentals of staffs, the definitions of numerous terms, their applications, and their justifications. The hero most likely already knew that the magic shoots faster with a longer staff. The crucial part was when she expressed her thoughts about large staffs and carried on with her narrative. To put it briefly, each staff's core is crucial to magic. It had 3 parts, one that released magic, one that accelerated magic, and an outer shell part. There were 2 layers to the part that accelerated magic. The spell will be faster if the outer part has a higher magical density and the core, through which the magic passes, is of higher quality. Depending on the kind of material, the quantity of mana that could build up in the staff determined the density of magic. 80 mana units made up the maximum magic density. Mana started to disappear in less than an hour if the total amount of mana accumulated surpassed the density limit. In other words, he could improve performance by using the best materials for both layers of the accelerating part and a material with a high maximum magical density for the outer shell. It was great for the hero if this was indeed the case. The man suggested creating a staff that could be used as a sword and had the magical speed of a regular one. Silently cast a doubtful glance at the man. She asked him to elaborate on everything because she didn't understand what he was talking about. The hero described a staff that would have a blade attached so that it could be used as a sword. The staff's outer shell would be made of iron lizard metal, which would give it power and magical density. He would have to charge the staff's accelerating component prior to each spell. He would receive increased magic speed in return for mana. The issue would be the quantity of mana he would require. The girl believed the hero had gone insane. The amount of magic that could be accumulated in a staff with such a structure, she said, would be sufficient for 100 spells. This is not to mention that this number equals the mana reserve of 3 average mages. The hero remembered that he had 500 times more mana than the average mage. Additionally, his MP regeneration was 500 times greater. If he were to use potions, it would be 5,000 times greater. Assumed that this could be interesting for her if he told her that he could use it. Unable to find the right words, claimed that this was precisely what made him an explorer. She found it intriguing. Since she promised to make it, the hero would be referred to as a mage whose MP runs out before he completes the spell. In response, said he would raise the MP limit to prevent this from occurring. All questions about weapons were now answered. It would take 3 days to make the staff, the girl said. The hero chose to finish a few quests in this city to kill time. He was promoted to rank E following the battle with the Iron Lizard, and he was now only allowed to accept quests of that level. His search proved to be a bit more intriguing this time. In the forest, the hero was now pursuing wolves and hurling stone spears at them. The wolves snarled and turned around. The wolf was on the verge of being struck by one big stone spear, but it was able to advance at the last second. It did, however, always glance back warily. Without giving them a chance, the hero called forth a hail of stone spears that rained down on the creatures. The fact that one of the red wolves was able to avoid one spell while he was eliminating them impressed the hero, but he still prevailed. It appeared that he needed to increase the speed of his magic. However, the scenery was still breathtaking. Grinning, the man turned to face the area. He was now high enough to observe that there were no trees at all in the city. He surmised that monsters might have avoided approaching as a result. It could have been done on purpose as a defense against monsters. The man heard his radar signal as he took in the scenery. They might have been bandits, adventurers, or people. There was a cave not far away. 2 armed guards were stationed at the entrance. Approaching them surreptitiously, the hero checked their statuses, believed that the bandits in question were part of the same gang that had abducted, and checking it was the best course of action. The radar indicated that there were 2 at the entrance and a number of others inside the cave. For some reason, they placed a guard at the entrance if they are attempting to hide. The hero thought it might be a bandit's hiding place. However, if this were the case, it was situated in a very surprising location. Made the decision to go back to the city and issue a warning. The head of the branch of the Adventurers Guild questioned whether the man had actually located the bandits' hiding place. The hero stating that two guards stood in front of a large opening that resembled an entrance. The head had recently questioned why they were working so fast. The fact that they established a hideout in the mountain was beyond his comprehension. It appeared to be a big gang because there was a guard at the entrance. Believed it to be a well-organized band of outlaws. Since he had no idea how many of them were inside, he made the decision to report this first. The head agreed with him and promised to reward him for his valuable information once they his claims. The head requested that this be kept a secret for the time being. The possibility that they had spies in the city could not be disregarded. According to the head, they could assemble a strike squad of adventurers from the guild to go after them. Was the discoverer, so there was a good chance he would be called. The hero agreed when the head asked him to come to the guild tomorrow morning. The man then went back to the workshop. While they worked diligently on his weapon, the dwarves talked among themselves about crucial issues. The man inquired about staff's preparedness. Since she had previously stated that it would take 3 days, the girl responded sternly that it was not yet ready. The hero realized that, presumably, he could test the new weapon before the bandit raid, but that he was unlikely to need it there. In that instance, the man made the decision to raid them using the available gear. The man saw that behind him, 2 dwarves were carrying a massive tree. Since all of the trees in the area had been felled, the hero had already deduced that this was done to keep monsters away. In response, said he was wrong. All the trees around the city were chopped down because they needed a lot of charcoal to straighten metal. They could mine coal in a mine, thought. In response, the girl said it wasn't good for forging. The metal would be of poor quality if they used it. The hero was already aware that temperature is the cause of all of this. He wanted to know how it was done in his world. He believed that coke and limestone were involved in all of this. The hero had a brilliant idea, but gave him another doubtful glance. The girl thought that these were just burning coals, but coal was already fuel. Explained that they could easily make coke and create new fuel by burning coals. She didn't understand the point. The hero responded that all of the coal's unnecessary components would burn out and only coke would remain if they removed the air and kept the coals in the furnace for roughly 15 hours. It produced no ash and was more effective. The girl did not quite understand him, besides fuel was not her specialty. She was only skilled at staff creation, but he could suggest an idea to the fuel shop if he had one. All he had to do was make sure this coke was suitable for fuel. This could also be profitable. Her approval of his idea pleased the hero. Later entered Sand's fuel shop. He encountered a dark-haired man selling there. The guy responded that he had an idea about making new fuel, despite the man's assumption that the hero needed charcoal, had previously told him to come here. The seller asked him what he meant by new fuel, as he was taken aback that he had come here on the workshop's recommendation. It was something that could be made from coal, the hero retorted. Retorted that there were no trees at all in the city's environs and that had a better idea for fuel than charcoal. He found it odd. The man recognized this man's skepticism right away. His words needed to be because they sounded suspicious. Grinned and said that in order to create this fuel, he would need his assistance. Naturally, he could sell the methodology if it is validated and he wishes to apply it. However, everything needed for the experiment would be covered by the hero. The man might be interested in such an offer. The hero realized that losses would be negligible in such circumstances. It appears that he would be the one to discover coke in this nation, if not the entire world. There was even a guild card in this world. For such situations, they ought to have a comparable system. Since the method suggested was not perfect, it wouldn't always work. The hero wanted to know what thought. The man smirked in return. Gave it a thumbs up, saying it was better than saying the technique was perfect. He ultimately agreed to the terms, and the hero thanked him for his assistance. Then suggested discussing the approach. As a result, a means of acquiring coke was established. But's primary responsibility was to be an explorer, not to produce fuel. It had been a night since he reported the bandits. When the hero emerged from the building, was greeted by one of the group's young men. At last, everyone came together. The adventurers in the guild formed the strike squad. The hero said he was happy to meet the guys and grinned at them. "My name is," the young man said. In addition to leading this strike squad, he was a wind mage who had attained B rank. Proposed to examine their possessions. From here, it was 8 kilometers southwest to the bandits' base. There should be between 30 and 40 people, depending on the damage they caused. They had to exercise caution because, despite being an E-rank quest, there were a lot of them, and glanced at the other girls in their group. The hero counted himself among 7 others. They probably believed that 7 people would be sufficient to deal with the bandits because this area had B ranks. Asked each of the group's men to give a brief introduction of themselves, including their name, rank, and occupation. A C-ranked swordsman first introduced himself. Second, a man named introduced himself. He was a swordsman and a D rank. A girl with dark hair identified herself as she was an archer with a D rank. Beside her was a short, blonde girl named she was a swordsman of E rank. A young man with dark hair identified himself as he was a spearman and an E rank. It was turn at last. The man gave his name and described himself as an E rank magic swordsman. The group stared at inquisitively, not understanding a word. Questioned the hero because she had never heard of a magic swordsman. Retorted that he was capable of using both magic and a sword. The fact that could use magic while moving and maintain his E rank struck him as odd. Said that there were only a few of these craftsmen among B ranks, indicating that he was not being serious. Was shocked because she had never heard of such a thing. Said he was sorry to ask, but he wanted the hero to show off his skills. He had to ascertain each person's true strength, and the hero knew everything. As an adventurer, he would not hide his strength when called upon, but he did not want to draw attention to himself. The guy went to the training field to a scarecrow because he thought it would be much worse if they were hurt because he concealed his true strength. Requested that he use dual magic and act as though he were engaged in actual combat. Additionally, if needed any potions, the man was going to give them to him. Grinning, the hero turned them away. Was asked by what he thought of the hero. His amateurish movements caught his attention. The man cut the air and thrust forward repeatedly. The mouths of and parted in shock and amazement. Meanwhile, concluded that he had had enough of fiddling with the sword. He attacked the unlucky scarecrow, conjuring a large number of stone arrows with fireballs. Only a sizable black patch from the scarecrow remained on the ground after the smoke from the fire had cleared. The men lost their ability to speak because they didn't believe what they saw. The hero expressed regret after realizing he had forgotten something. He recalled that had asked him to use dual magic, and he was about to do so when yelled that it was sufficient. Didn't know why, made the assumption that it didn't live up to his expectations. Was also intrigued by his resistance to magic and defense. The hero had demonstrated enough, he meant. The hero remembered that he could use healing magic, which would allow him to heal a simple fracture in a split second. In terms of resistance, he could cast spells on the enemy for 20 minutes without using up all of his mana points. Yelled that it was in a rank power and couldn't figure out why the hero was still at E rank. "A lot happened to me," said with a smile. In addition, he had only been an adventurer for a month or so. That was most likely the case if his strength did not correspond with his rank. He was truly amazing, said, grabbing his head. Even though he was beginning to doubt his abilities as a mage, would still be of great assistance to them. The man asked when they would storm their base and said could take the lead. The hero believed that if he claimed he was not scared to be at the front, he would be lying to them. Nevertheless, he agreed to this request and declared that the front would belong to him. Their group soon made their way to the cave, which was surrounded by a thick forest. They saw guards at the entrance as they crept up on it from the bushes. A bandit who was watching over the cave gave a drowsy yawn. The group decided to put in the back and in the front after debating their plan. It was enough with the 3 of them. In order to obstruct the bandits' known escape routes, the others had to disperse throughout the area, glanced at and nodded, indicating something. The hero made a number of stone spears and used them to slay the bandits at the entrance. Bleeding, the bandits collapsed to the ground. His words trailed off in the middle before he could rush forward and issue an order. Was completely unaware of his hasty departure from his allies. Although didn't understand speed, it didn't matter now. His ability to run calmly in the cave was beyond the guy's comprehension. However, the hero was able to see his path because of the radar. The bandits had not yet spotted them, but it was only a matter of time. He simply had to run farther anyway. If he saw someone, he would use appraisal to determine whether or not he was a bandit, and then deal with them if necessary. At first, the two bandits he ran past didn't understand him. The bandits asked not to mention that it was an adventurer after giving him a perplexed look in return. They sensed pressure magic on themselves just as they were about to capture him. And who seemed to be nearing the end of their lives soon appeared behind him. Believed they arrived here rather easily and was relieved that the cave did not branch. Responded cynically that he was aware of that. However, the hero believed that going farther would be more difficult. With these thoughts, he arrived at a room with a specific door at the end. There was no handle on this door, but it blocked the cave. This implied that it could only be opened from the inside. According to his radar, there was empty space behind this door. The voices also indicated that there were a lot of people. Called and placed his hand on his shoulder while the hero considered his next move. Would the man be able to use magic again, he asked. He intended to deal with them by breaking through this door. I understand everything, said with a smirk. And positioned themselves on either side of the door, ready to launch an assault. The countdown started. Meanwhile, none of the other bandits on the opposite side of the door had any suspicions. They enjoyed themselves, drank, and played board games together. Some just dozed off in the vicinity of the doors. A sudden explosion shattered their tranquility, destroying the door and a whole wall. Scared bandits turned back abruptly, spotting a human figure in the smoke. The stranger was asked who he was by one of the black-robed bandits. A slew of stone spears extended behind as he silently flew forward. The hero used his appraisal skill to pierce everyone with stone spears after realizing they were all bandits. The bandits could do nothing to stop, killed everyone and ruthlessly destroyed the entire room, and were stunned. All they could do was observe the entire situation in silence. Everything settled down after a few minutes. The guys went outside to join the rest of the group after clearing the cave. With a sigh, declared that it was all over, asked what was wrong after noticing a change in his voice, was astounded by how quickly it happened. It was a little disappointing, but all the bandits were destroyed, said, was incredibly powerful. For the first time, believed he had finished a mission with such ease. They ought to start gathering loot now. The main thing in this situation, the hero thought with a smile, was that everything was all right, scowled as his radar abruptly beeped a warning. 7 people and a child were coming here, he told the guys. These individuals might be abductors. Was fully aware of everything. He recommended catching them and gathering data. While they dealt with the others, the man asked to save the child. In fact, a small group of people soon emerged close to the cave entrance. A child was on the shoulder of one of the men. With a sigh of relief, the bandit declared that they had finally reached their destination. The man saw something was amiss as they got closer to the cave. His group was hiding close by and surreptitiously observing them at this precise moment. They awaited a favorable opportunity to launch a surprise attack. The kid-carrying bandit heard footsteps behind them. He turned back abruptly and inquired as to who was present. The man apparently became confused because he did not know who these people were, was currently hiding in the bushes directly in front of him. Abruptly, the man leaped on him and applied pressure magic. He believed the prisoner had been safely freed as he held the child in his arms. turned to face the girl, who was surprisingly light. She must have been put under forced hypnosis to sleep. The man turned to face his allies, who were currently engaged in combat with the remaining bandits. Since they didn't appear to need assistance, the hero chose to find out how she was doing, used the appraisal skill while placing the girl on the ground. Rhea was the name of this girl. She belonged to a unique race of elven people. She was therefore a unique elf, and it seems that she had no status ailments. The fact that her status was different from others, however, shocked the guy the most. He found it odd that she had no mana at all. Although there was no mana indicator in her status, he would still comprehend if her mana was 0. All of this was beyond the hero's comprehension. She possessed 2 abilities, external magical power ability and magic control level 17, and her age was unknown. She had 17 while his highest leveled skill was 3. Regardless of your point of view, it was beyond common sense, and the man had no idea what external magical power ability meant. If they had poor mana control, they could use the mana of nearby mages thanks to an external magical power ability. Although the hero did not fully comprehend the meaning of weak mana control, it was simply astounding if she could manipulate the magic of others based on their magical control. The fact that these people were able to catch her at all surprised. The girl's head twitched as he considered it. The elf snapped out of it and gave the man a startled look. She said she felt a great magical power from him and asked who he was, asked if she was okay after introducing himself. He clarified that she had been abducted earlier. With a broad smile, the girl identified herself as Rhea. She gladly acknowledged that she had been abducted and did not appear distressed, thought all of this was odd. He looked at the elf in confusion and did not understand what was wrong with her, was already on her way to them at that point. He inquired about the captive's health from. In response, the hero turned to face and inquired about their situation. They just finished tying up the bandits, the man said. They suffered few losses because of. The hero was happy to hear that the captive was doing well and apologized for abandoning her in that state, forgetting entirely that she was still bound. Simply responded with an equally broad smile. The girl leaped to her feet and declared that since she could do it herself, everything would be all right. When she got up, her ropes slipped out of her hands. Lost the ability to speak when the rope hit the floor, but she still thanked the man for the offer. The girl responded that since she lacked magical abilities, the hero's assumption that she could get away on her own was incorrect. Nothing was still clear to the hero. She undoubtedly possessed magic because she was able to free herself. The elf responded that it was simple to use because she had a lot of mana and weak control. This implied that she used some mana and external magical power ability without his knowledge. However, thought it odd that his mana did not diminish, said he was sorry but he didn't fully understand her. The hero acknowledged that he didn't fully understand her either. Anyway, she was safe now, asked the young girl to come to him and promised to ask the guild to find out where she had been abducted. Did not understand the elf's response when she said she would not approach him. The girl took the hero's hand and explained that she didn't want to see the uncle because his mana was difficult to use. Everyone was taken aback when she declared her desire to remain with. It seems that she developed feelings for him, recommended that they leave her in custody until they arrived at the guild, did not mind and agreed. When the girl joyfully took the man's hand, the hero said that they ought to head home. He was relieved that she proved to be so obedient, but he was still baffled by how she untied herself, let alone her abilities. Even after being abducted, she was able to maintain her positive attitude. Rhea was a really peculiar young woman. When the hero reached the guild, all he could hope for was that it would end. The girl at the guild stated that it was their responsibility to take in and care for abducted children, but there was a single issue. The girls were at a loss for what to do. The elf said she didn't want to go anywhere and grabbed the man. After learning about her biography, the administrator asked the hero to take care of her for a while. The girl yelled that she wanted to spend all of her time with. The girl questioned if he didn't actually know her, awkwardly said he didn't know her. By nightfall, the hero was forced to pull into his chamber. The girl started jumping on all fours after discovering a soft bed there. It was really soft here, she said. Couldn't figure out why things had gone this way. However, it seems that she had no recollection of the kidnapping. Once more, she was a young child, and the hero believed she wouldn't pose a significant threat to him. It would take 5 days for the guild to find out anything about her. The man reasoned that since it was only 5 days, he would be able to get by. Let her sleep on this bed for the time being and declared that it was time to go to sleep. Since he was unable to travel with a child under his care, the hero spent the entire night considering what he would do tomorrow. He wouldn't be able to finish extermination missions in this manner. He had a lot of things to do, so he decided to see how his employees and the production of Coca-Cola were doing. With these thoughts, fell asleep. The man opened his eyes the following morning. The first thing he noticed was Ria's face, which was too near to him. The man became frightened and failed to comprehend her purpose. In addition, she managed to climb on top of him, took a seat on the couch. Ria was already awake as far as he could tell. The elf wished a good morning and claimed that she woke up because she sensed his mana. The man wished her a good morning with a small smile, but he was still baffled by her condition. The hero made the decision to go to his fuel shop early in the morning. He greeted the man there and inquired about their progress with Coke. Greeted and reported that everything was going well with the experiment. He looked at the child with interest. He inquired about the girl's identity after realizing that the man was too young to be a father. She had been abducted by bandits and suffered from amnesia, the hero responded, so he was caring for her while the guild looked into her background. That was awful, the man said, assuming he had taken a vacation from guild work. In order to outshine the green uncle, the girl cheerfully stated that Ria could battle. What she meant was not clear to the man, thought she was referring to San. Was a B-rank adventurer if one recalls. However, Ria had no combat skills when last evaluated her, had taken a long vacation as the man stated. Irritated, Ria reiterated that she was capable of fighting, chuckled at what she had said. They strolled to the coke furnace together. The hero was pleasantly impressed when he saw the outcome there. The pipes appeared overheated and emitted thick smoke despite their success. The man thought there was a gas leak. The project was still experimental after all. Used an old, unused furnace that had been partially rebuilt, which contributed to this. The man would ask a blacksmith to construct a suitable furnace if the experiment was successful. The hero ought to realize that using to reinforce it was challenging. The hero didn't realize it had been reinforced with until he finished speaking. After and orichalcum was the strongest material in games. At the start of the experiment, the hero had already contributed a sum of money, inquired as to whether the current budget could still be managed. Although he was unaware of the cost of, he could assist if they were short on funds. Was everywhere, the man said, not understanding what he meant, was taken aback by his response. It's, Ria said, pointing to a gleaming stone. She saw it in the wall as well as another piece close by. Could not be used literally everywhere, the man said with a smile. He made the decision to examine the stone. Ria was concentrating on using appraisal. It was actually ore with a moderate amount of impurities, according to the appraisal. Evidently was unaware that a third of these stones were ore, as the man informed the shocked man. It is impossible for ore to be completely pure. Typically, only half were ore, with the remainder being impurities. It surprised that knew how to make coke, even though his knowledge was only average. Didn't seem to be much of a value here. The hero believed the man still had money based on the situation. He informed Ria that the gas leak required action. The girl suggested watching and said she would do something with that overflowing thing. The man grabbed her tiny hands as soon as she opened her mouth and asked her to stop. The hero advised her to avoid the furnace because it was dangerous. Ria concurred, saying she would handle it from here, gazed at her inquisitively, unable to grasp her meaning. The elf indicated the gas leak in the pipe and pointed her tiny hands in the direction of the furnace, and could not believe that the gas was dissipating as if by magic. The gas leak stopped for some reason. Rhea said, "I did it," with her typical smile. Since she didn't have magic, the guy was perplexed and didn't understand how she could use it. "How did you do that?" he asked the girl. In response, Rhea used magic to melt, which she then used to seal the cracks. It was very simple for her. She was completely unaware of how incredible what she had accomplished was. It makes sense why the hero experienced an odd feeling after saving her. There was no common sense in this girl. Was helpless here. Observing he felt that he had to impart logic to her. He showed the girl the piece of he had taken. He bent like clay in front of her eyes. She thought this was equally amazing. The man clarified that it was typically impossible to weld something so precisely from that distance, in contrast to bending with force. The girl was overjoyed, was shocked to remember that could not be bent with just the hands. The man understood that he had made a mistake. Gave the elf a curious glance, but Rhea continued to gaze at him as though she didn't understand. Was told by another man that the furnace appeared to be in good shape. The man said he had heard about and was happy to see him. Taking off his hat, he identified himself as he was in charge of accounting. In response, said he was happy to meet him. They had a lot to talk about, according to, in case they wanted to start producing coke. He went straight to work, inquired about the desired technical fee amount. The man was taken aback that they had considered everything before arriving. The news was good. Production was abrupt for and had not even stabilized yet. With great enthusiasm, responded that it was because coke was a great fuel. They were able to purify more effectively because of the high temperature it reached. According to his calculations, production was accelerated 20 times by using charcoal and 10 times by using coke instead of coal. This implied that they could simply refine stones in this region and abandon existing mines if they produced coke in large quantities. He personally desired mass production as soon as possible, and one furnace would pay for itself in 10 days. Understanding, made an effort to move a little away from the elderly man as his words carried him away. Was here to talk about his profit share, as the hero understood, didn't really know much about it. He would be content if he could receive even 10% of the profit. Actually inquired about technical fees with the Merchants Guild. It seems that 50% profit was typical in this instance, Saught's viewpoint. The hero explained his percentage too because he was so taken aback by it, even winced in shock, thought it was excessive. Even though the hero did not believe that merchants had any justification for lying, it was still excessive. In any case, responded it was advanced technology and he thought 50% was not enough for. Acknowledged that he had created yet another misunderstanding, but he felt that it was excessive. He quickly responded that it was more than sufficient and made the decision to take what he could. Proposed sticking with this sum and expressed satisfaction that they had come to an agreement. According to the man, could get his share in any other city. It amounted to a minor favor. "I understand," the hero said with a smile, because everything happened so fast, started to feel anxious. The man pondered what would occur when they next crossed paths. With a smile, Rhea inquired as to their next destination. The hero surveyed the area and pondered. Though he realized it would take a full day to complete, he wondered about his staff sword. Might believe he was hurrying her if he came by like yesterday. Thus, waiting was preferable. It dawned on the hero that he had nothing to do. "Do you want to go somewhere?" he asked Rhea. The elf retorted that she was eager for adventure and a chance to defeat monsters. The guy warned that fighting monsters was dangerous and thought she was a real battle brat. Even though he was aware of magic, he preferred to hold off until she was able to defend herself. Rhea declared that she was a mage and that she would be all right as long as remained close. The hero looked at her curiously and asked if she was really a mage. Rhea gestured to the unusual ornament on her head, had no idea what it was and had never seen anything like it. In response, the girl said it was a protective hairpin. It neutralized any attacks that might endanger the user by using its innate magical power. It could be charged by pouring mana into it, and it was unrecognizable to those with bad intentions. It's true cheating, said. However, the man concluded that she would be safe if she had the hairpin. Something else was more crucial. What such a thing did to Rhea was beyond his comprehension. The girl requested to beat monsters and asked if she was amazing. The hero was forced to concur. He asked Rhea to stay close to him because he didn't like it. The girl was overjoyed by his choice. The protagonists then made their way into the forest a few minutes after departing the guild building. Rhea discovered a number of necessary herbs there. This time agreed to the quest of collecting grass. The request was for a F rank. The guild's request was the safest one. When looking for grass, the hero planned to do just that. He had to locate one in order to know what to look for before he could use information analysis to locate the necessary herbs. Back behind him, spotted an intriguing plant. He used appraisal, thinking it might be the grass. However, analysis revealed that it was brev grass, a plant that mimicked grass. The hero responded that it was a fake, but Rhea believed had found it. The girl then gave him a stem and suggested that he check her grass. It was grass, the hero confirmed. It was right, he declared, and commended her for her efforts. The hero did not recall competing, but Rhea grinned and claimed to have one. Then he wouldn't lose, said. Then, using his knowledge of information analysis, the man discovered a lot of herbs. Tiny arrows indicated the plants that were needed. The girl said was cheating after the hero had already gathered 7. I'm not cheating, he said with a smile. He believed it was too childish to be considered cheating. A match was still a match. An arrow pointed to another plant nearby. Rhea, however, had already picked the plant before the hero did. She had snatched it from under his nose after waiting until he discovered it. He thought that Rhea's magic was the same as what she used in the fuel shop. Like his information analysis, she recently discovered where grass is. She was asked if she knew the precise location by the hero. In response, the girl said she didn't. Rhea just located the concentration of magic. He was astonished when she used his detection ability. Rhea eventually stopped talking and turned away. The man asked what had happened after noticing a problem. Without uttering a word, Rhea employed like stone magic. The girl was surrounded by stone needles. This was unexpected by. More significantly, radar indicated that there were no monsters in the area. However, the self-assured girl hurled the needles forward and cried out that monsters were undoubtedly present. Looked on in confusion as Rhea pointed. Her needles of stone flew into the woods. They heard an animal moaning somewhere. Chose to check because he was so shocked. 2 injured wolves, agitated by the unexpected attack, sat behind bushes deep in the forest. The wolves peered around, their teeth bared. The man was taken aback that they were red wolves. It was unbelievable to him that Rhea could detect an enemy at a distance of at least 100 meters. How did she find them? The hero asked. It was not, in his opinion, one of her skills. The girl responded that mana and monsters were unique, so she located them. However, obstacles made the search more difficult. The hero believed that she was carrying a radar in her pocket. He briefly thought she was comparing him to monsters. Rhea went on, hurling more stone needles at her adversaries. The wolf's neck was struck and punctured by the needles. Saw that she was quite accurate. From that distance, not even he could hit. Rhea retorted that ought to do it as well since the projectile was homing. The hero claimed he was unable to shoot homing projectiles because he did not comprehend. Was slow, so it was impossible, Rhea said. Pointed at her projectile in confusion. That's why, the girl said, bringing the flying projectile closer. She claimed that was the reason she had mastered magic, as she hurled the projectile forward with amazing speed. When the projectile hit a big rock, it broke it. Wolves in the area became vigilant and turned to face the shot. His magic was faster and more powerful than Ria's, the girl said with a smile. The man thanked her after glancing at the broken rock with a hint of fear. Was perplexed as to why she fired right away. Ria retorted that was peculiar since he was incapable of doing that. He thought she was the same even though she called him strange, thought she could only use one magic, and he had a thought. Ria was given another magic by the hero. Although Ria waved her hands and said it was impossible, he was certain it was strong. She would lose control if she used it, according to Ria, who described it as chaotic magic. It was evident from her words that had very poor magic control. The hero was most likely a materialization master and a cheating magic swordsman if Ria was a cheating nimble caster. Ria's magic was weak and his was chaotic. The hero believed that they could become unbeatable if he produced strong magic and Ria used it at the same rate. Naturally, even if she refused, he would return her if the guild discovered her, but in the interim they could engage in combat like this. The wolves had already bared their teeth and seen their prey. The girl turned to face the shot and noticed a number of enraged wolves coming toward her. Ria inquired about his magic and warned of impending monsters. She gave a curious glance. He had a contented grin on his face for some reason. The girl asked why he appeared happy. The hero yelled and turned to face Ria in confusion. The man grinned and said, "This is getting to be fun." Ria grinned back, agreeing. The elf made a number of stone needles and pointed them at the wolves while declaring that she was enjoying herself as well. If was correct, the elf did not exhaust his mana while using it to activate magic. The reason it wasn't spent was unclear to the hero. In response, Ria stated that she only utilized the mana that squandered, inquired about the amount of mana she had taken from him in order to get clarification. After giving it some thought, the girl replied that she had taken every particle from him. She struck with a stone arrow after saying these words. She discovered that she could use his mana to perform magic in the same way that he used it for spells. In response, Ria said she couldn't control it if it was a source of magical power. Ria stated this as though it were self-evident. This helped the hero realize that he was using his magic without fully understanding it. Concluded that he might be able to emulate Ria if he trained magic control. It was quite possible, the girl replied. However, she didn't sense had any magical control skills. Ria likened him to someone who appeared to have traveled from a world devoid of magic. A knot of anxiety formed in the man's throat upon hearing this. In that instance, the hero was perplexed as to why he was able to use magic without any training. He figured a gift for magic would make it possible. If he had it, Ria replied, he could use magic without the right control. Although lacked proper magic control, he was still able to use magic because he used force to activate it. Grasped Ria's meaning. In a similar manner, Ria used her magic to firmly alter shape. Roughly, the hero used his magic in the same manner. Naturally, the natural world is the source of his earth and water magic. Natural ignition could happen if he uses magical power to directly raise the temperature of the atmosphere. The environment and a wild imagination were crucial factors in triggering the hero's magic. Since lightning magic was not a fundamental component of the environment, he was unable to use it. He believed that since lightning could never be activated, he shouldn't rely on it. Ria gave a big animal sandwich that she had made while she was thinking, tried the sandwich and thanked her. It turned out to be tasty and somewhat salty, which surprised. The hero then recalled that they had forgotten to pack any ingredients. He asked Ria a question because he couldn't figure out where the girl got her salt. Ria claimed to have taken salt from the ground while chewing her sandwich. It seems that did not fully comprehend her. And Ria eventually made their way back to the guild, where they terrified every other adventurer in the area. Everybody gazed at them as though they were witnessing something unthinkable. Took out from the inventory a whole mountain of dead wolves and asked to confirm completion of the request and take all the animals. They brought over 300 red wolf corpses and 4,000 stems of grass, which astounded the girl administrator. She was perplexed as to how they discovered them in such large numbers. Grinning, Rhea added that she also assisted him. The hero believed that this response would soon become customary. Was approached by one of the administrator girls, who apologized to him. She said they needed to talk about Rhea and had a rather dejected expression. The girl invited Rhea and to sit on the sofa after guiding them into a spacious guest room. Rhea inquired as to what they wished to discuss with. The man concluded right away that it seemed the guild workers had already located Rhea's. However, given how well the hero and she got along, the girl must have found it difficult to say this. The hero believed he should initiate the conversation first if that were indeed the case. He asked the administrator, assuming that Rhea's parents had come to pick her up. That was not the case, the anxious girl said, apologizing. The man gaped at her, waiting for an explanation. In the end, they were unable to locate her parents or any other family members, feared they wouldn't be able to locate them. It turned out that Rhea could not have lived in any of the cities where the bandits originated. According to what the bandits said, they discovered the child in the middle of the forest. The guy reasoned that since her was so far away, there must be some possible cities from which she could have originated. Although this was theoretically plausible, they came to the conclusion that it was highly unlikely. First of all, the guild had not discovered any records of a race that shared Rhea's traits. These words drove the guy into a dead end. Told the girl she shouldn't hear this and apologized. He put his hands over the elf's ears after saying these words. The guy thought that she might have been abandoned due to her traits, but it didn't appear that they did. The girl did not know details but could say the reason was not that. The hero did not understand what she meant. Even so, Rhea had a lot of enigmatic aspects. She possessed abilities, a unique elven race, and an odd hairstyle. Naturally, the hero informed the guild about her race, but he was not shocked when they discovered nothing because they had no records of members of this race. The girl was addressed by the hero. Although he was aware that she had lost her memory, he still wanted her to share at least a little about herself. He thought Rhea might recall a location where she was, a scene, or something similar. After giving it some thought, the girl recalled being in a forest and finding no signs of magic. It was very far and possibly on another continent. She now firmly responded to all of his inquiries. She responded in a way that was not appropriate for a young child. This was one of her mysteries. She must have been older than she appeared. The hero asked the girl what they would do with Rhea, assuming she might even be older than him. The girl responded that they were currently looking for a guardian to take her under their care, but it was hard to find volunteers. When the girl threatened to place Rhea in an orphanage if they couldn't find anyone, Rhea became terrified. Rhea yelled that she didn't want that and seized once more. "I want to stay with him," she said. The girl's abrupt and incisive response startled the hero. "Could take her under guardianship?" the excited girl asked. Even so, raising a young girl would likely be challenging for an explorer. The hero believed it would be feasible in normal circumstances. However, Rhea actually lost her memory. His mind somewhat cleared when she discovered that he shared her special talents. He realized that if he pushed her away, he would feel as though he had betrayed Sally, who had assisted him, and kindness in general. Figured that he could just bring her along and they would go on adventures together. However, that would probably be too risky. The hero believed that if they battled weak monsters, everything would be all right, but feared a case could happen when he would have to use all his mana, like with the steel lizard. Hoped she could flee since she would be unable to cast since Rhea had used his mana. Even though he felt sorry for her, she would only be a burden to him until he was certain of this. He couldn't let himself risk endangering her. After giving the girl a pitying glance, the man turned to face the administrator and waited for his response. The girl was asked by the hero if he could postpone this a bit. The administrator happily agreed as he gave the girl a pat on the head. He had until he left for another city to make up his mind, she said. Glanced at Rhea and requested permission to make a clarification. She shouldn't be concerned about that because he promised not to leave her alone. Rhea grinned broadly and nodded. This conversation was followed by the following day. The girl suggested that visit the guild as she frantically ran around the room. She was eager to face more powerful monsters today. She desired to capture a blood tiger or dark SARS. Rhea was always prepared to carry out an extermination quest when the hero woke up. The mere mention of her name likely made the monsters shudder. Rhea appeared to want to establish her worthiness so would accept her. The guy replied that they would go on adventures later because his primary concern was her safety. For the time being, he had a more important place to go. The girl looked at inquisitively, not understanding what he meant. When they arrived at his workshop, inquired about his employees. The girl said his staff was ready and smiled as she greeted. The hero's actual use of a staff surprised Rhea. The man replied that he was a magic swordsman after all, was questioned about the unknown girl. However, the girl suggested that it would be better to examine her invention as it was no longer significant. She was holding a fantastic staff that doubled as a sword. The hero was thrilled at the sight of what she dubbed the Witcher sword. Was already aware that it was pretty cool but took it in his hands and declared it to be so. He had a staff-like energy which surprised Rhea. The girl asked why his staff appeared to be a sword while casting a curious glance at him. It was kind of weird, said with a smile. However, the truth is that the hero himself desired this kind of staff. It ended up being one of her best pieces. The man tested the weapon by swinging it. Declared that the weight of the sword staff was perfect. The girl advised trying it in magic in that situation, and this location was ideal. It's going to get hot now, the man said. The hero had already eagerly anticipated this and laughed and acknowledged that she had already pictured how he would cast with it. There was a pristine plain with rocks all around it not far from the workshop. This location was ideal for testing the new weapon. With admiration, Rhea declared that the hero possessed a significant amount of mana. Questioned the girl, astonished that could see mana. The hero saw that this sword was unquestionably different from the one that had been used before. He could feel the mana being drawn out of it. It would leave it once it reached the staff's density limit. After investing 200 mana units in it, made the decision to test its limits. The man used a stone spear and aimed the weapon forward. The stone spear struck the rock across from the startled girls in an instant. Smoke emerged as a portion of the rock fell. Rhea exclaimed it was incredibly fast, with delight, was so taken aback that she ran out of words. Such a result perplexed. He glanced at his sword in bewilderment and inquired as to what had happened to its speed. He believed that the staff's material was to blame for all of this. He could see the projectile due to his speed, but he would most likely strike a red wolf from a kilometer away with it. Asked the man over the phone what had happened. What she meant was unclear too. Naturally, she was taken aback by his swordplay, but she couldn't have predicted how much mana he had put into it. Estimated that he spent roughly 1,000 mana units, excluding useless mana waste. However, it was insignificant to him. It was the entire mana reserve of 5 mages, cried. She was already skeptical that was a regular person. Clarified that he was a mere mortal with an extraordinarily vast mana reserve. Rhea probably didn't understand because he said it in a slightly incorrect context. Wanted to request that Rhea hold off. Anyway, this staff was fantastic. The hero thanked for her efforts, certain that only she could create such a weapon. With a sigh, said she had nothing more to say if was satisfied. Realized abruptly that she had forgotten to say something. She told the hero that the guy from the gas station was searching the entire city for him. He claimed that when the hero had some free time, he wanted to speak with. The hero and Rhea soon made their way back to the gas station. There, San greeted him, thanked for coming and expressed his pleasure at meeting her. The hero believed something had happened and wanted to know what it was. Declared with joy that all of the equipment needed to produce coke was ready. By the time they reached the mass production stage, 10 machines were operational. Was surprised at how quickly they completed it. went to the Coal Miners Association because they were short-staffed. They obviously agreed to cooperate after learning about attempts to produce Coca-Cola. Production nearly doubled as a result of them. The Coal Miners Association thought had a pretty long name. In any event, they ought to visit the production site and find out how Coca-Cola was doing. Consented, and they proceeded to the location. Work was exploding at the production site. Coal and beams were actively transported by dwarfs in carts. A friendly atmosphere prevailed despite the hard work, and they were always talking about something. Rhea was taken aback by how many dwarves there were. These dwarves, as the hero understood them, belonged to the Coal Miners Association. According to, the majority came from the association. One man came up to while they were talking. He identified himself as the chairman of the Coal Miners Association, was already known to him. The hero became a little perplexed since he had not anticipated meeting the chairman in person. The man identified himself as the idea's creator and expressed his pleasure at meeting. "I'm here too," Rhea exclaimed animatedly, saw that the girl was very animated and smiled at her. He wanted to thank the hero for saving them, but he had to speak with first. Asked, not understanding what he meant, overlooked distance. He claimed that a strange sickness had recently spread throughout the mine. Although it could be fought, it significantly slowed down work. However, after learning about, their miners were able to find a secure place to work. Reasoned that if the disease started in the mines, it might have been caused by toxic gases. The man asked to elaborate on the condition. According to, the sick had migraines and nausea, symptoms similar to those of a mild magical overload brought on by consuming wyvern meat. They were fortunate that nobody died or experienced any problems. However, they were still unable to work at their maximum capacity. Additionally, keep in mind that wyvern meat may result in mana overload. Questioned how they combated this disease, they didn't have to go near the mines, everything was easy. The sick were only allowed to work 3 hours a day, and they had to take time off to prevent their illness from getting worse. The profit from this type of work hardly covered the salaries of the employees. Nearly everyone was now incapacitated because they had to rest for nearly the entire day. Apparently, gas was not the cause of the illness. The hero wanted to use appraisal to learn something. In addition, the production of coke would increase even further if he could discover the cause of this illness. The man made a proposal to San. Suggested letting him handle the illness's root cause. Offered his assistance, believing he could resolve their problem. Acknowledged that would be very beneficial to them in this way. No one could go that far, but he had already sent a request to the guild. However, the elderly man thought that if the hero pursued this issue, he would undoubtedly discover something. When Rhea questioned the man about monsters, replied that they would not go kill them just yet. She should remain here for the time being since monsters were not the issue this time. Was certain that she would take offense if he asked her to stay, but he was unable to bring her into gas-filled mines or anything else. That they wouldn't have to fight made Rhea sad, thought it odd that she fussed over something like that. Rhea pointed with her finger in the direction she thought the coal mines were, and gazed at the girl, astonished. It was a very intoxicating place, according to the elf. She indicated a luminous stream emanating from a location in the far-off mountains where the sun was sinking. Wanted to inquire about this with San. The man replied that the high number of victims was the primary reason they left it. The girl was questioned by the hero about the source of the magical power leak. Rhea replied that it had been slightly changed. It was something that altered the power of magic. There was a man standing across from them that she suspected. The hero glanced at the employees talking about something close by. That dwarf had a rather pale face, but he was unable to see what Rhea was talking about. He applied appraisal to the man with the dark hair. He suffered from a condition known as magical overload. Similar to mana, magical energy is an element that floats in the atmosphere. The carelessness Rhea witnessed was probably the result of magical energy, which also served as the catalyst for everything. and from the tone of her voice, it was clear that monsters were the source of magical energy. Was starting to realize what was going on. Went up to that exact employee and inquired about Garner's health. The dwarf responded that although he wasn't in the best of health after returning from the coal mine, he was still able to work. The chairman concurred but advised him to take a short break and avoid overworking himself. Garner gave a nod and moved forward. Thought Rhea had a lot of talent despite her age. The man proposed to accompany his small companion on the investigation. He could easily flee if he sensed any monsters there. Children shouldn't have any issues because they were far less affected by the illness than adults. Like Rhea said, she would be all right, believed she was correct. If Rhea promised that everything would be all right, then it would be. Monsters were his biggest concern. If things didn't work out, the hero believed they could just flee. Nevertheless, he agreed and promised to bring Rhea along. The hero saw Rhea moving as their group made their way to their destination. She seemed to be flying to him. It must be one of her talents, he thought. She could easily retreat if needed if she could accomplish that. They arrived at the mine shortly after. There was a warning sign about the coal mine disease in front of its entrance. The girl agreed when the hero asked Rhea if she had seen any monsters before going into the mine. Rhea would attempt to search, but the elf said it would be more difficult due to the walls. The hero totally overlooked the fact that walls make her detection less effective. This implied that his detection would be more valuable than hers in this mine. As examined his radar, Rhea approached and made contact with the walls. The man asked Rhea about something he felt beneath the ground. The girl claimed to feel more careless beneath her feet. She was shocked that the hero saw her. He could thank his radar for this one. There was a gap of about 30 centimeters beneath the earth, but that was all he could say at the moment. This was where they had to dig, struck something hard after using a magic shovel. Rhea assisted with earth magic as well. Inquired about Rhea's thoughts after wondering what they had seen. The girl's response to this section was different from others. She believed that this was a building from the past. Unable to comprehend, thought it might be ancient ruins or something similar. According to Rhea, this place had a magic wall that couldn't destroy. However, was even more eager to smash it after she said that. Rhea was asked to back off. Was going to use his magic, Rhea surmised. In general, she didn't mind. 10 minutes later, was standing with a shield in his hands, and Rhea appeared quite concerned. Continued to make every effort to breach the magic wall. Rhea made the decision to find out if he was truly human. As he considered it, was using his magic for the first time in front of Rhea. She believed that he was not human, but found that to be quite impolite. The hero used full power pressure magic and advised advancing. The earth beneath them started to tremble. However, the magic wall remained untarnished despite his ruthless power. As Rhea mentioned, the guy was surprised that this thing was so durable. Something cracked on the ground close to Rhea before he could finish speaking. The girl was the first to notice and cautioned. The hero cast a curious glance back. Rhea rushed to assist him when the floor beneath his feet abruptly collapsed. She came right next to him and caught his waist in the middle. "It's too heavy," the girl said. "They would just crash if this kept up because they were too heavy." The hero begged her to let him go. He was going to land himself somehow. Rhea nodded and released right away. Kept falling, but he was unable to see the bottom while in the air. His radar indicated that he would strike the ground in roughly 15 meters. He might be able to survive such a fall if he employed recovery magic. Before they crushed him, he had to collect all the stones. His landing time was just 3 seconds. When there was only a second left, the hero braced himself. Despite the challenge, he avoided crashing. The hero felt fine after landing on his feet. He grinned and believed that his strength had increased. Rhea called before he started to feel better, turned to see the girl flying and landing on her feet with ease. She rushed over to check on him. The hero responded that it was pitch black and requested that Rhea use magic to illuminate the area. Rhea with his request right away. Above her head, she conjured a gleaming magic sphere that filled the room with light. Glanced around, trying to figure out their location. There were only walls, but the area was vast and empty. The girl thought they were in a structure. Rhea was asked by the hero what she knew about this structure. Rhea wasn't sure, but there was a lot of carelessness here. And Rhea came to the conclusion that magical energy came from this. As it happened, they struck gold. Now, getting out and reporting it was crucial. The hero smirked anxiously. How would they climb out? The man asked, lifting his head to the opening. The wall was vertical. Rhea couldn't fly out, despite the hero's assumption that she could. She was able to float but not soar. If the hero was unable to soar so high, then she did not see the purpose of flying. She undoubtedly produced lift similar to that of an airplane. Jet thrust caused the girl to float, but her height was limited. She used magical power to push air beneath herself and float. The hero then inquired as to whether he could use his immense magical power to perform this magic. Rhea instantly said no to him lifting her. She claimed that because lacked self-control, he could kill her by lifting her too violently. They ought to look for another exit after that. He wanted to find out from Rhea which direction was most prone to negligence. The guy replied that they would go in the opposite direction after the girl pointed in one direction. Rhea protested, saying she wanted to fight. However, the hero suggested looking for nearby monsters and reminded them that they were only here to investigate. Rhea closed her eyes and claimed that a large monster was close by, but she later claimed that she mistook it for what she meant was unclear too. They kept moving forward. The hole they fell through was visible to the hero. He became acutely aware that they were walking in circles. Rhea also observed. The building was therefore shaped like a. There were walls all around, but the man pictured his place and the hole in the ceiling. Rhea concurred but pointed out that there was an odd energy in this section of the wall. They moved in closer to take a look. It was it, the girl said. The wall did not respond to magic. Evidently, a door was posing as a wall. The radar did not see anything behind this door, or rather, it was unable to see due to the door. Either way, this door has to open. The man saw a scratch, indicating that it had previously been opened, but since they had no idea what was behind them, they had to exercise extreme caution. However, Rhea opened the door with ease and gave the order to open sesame. The man believed she was making fun of him, so he put his hand over his face. The hero looked into the darkness after hearing a buzzing coming from the depths of the tunnel. They were approached by a swarm of insects that looked like dragonflies or bumblebees. They had dangerous-looking, sharp metallic stingers at the end of the body. The intruders were quickly approached by the insects. After warning Rhea that monsters were present, the hero covered her with his shield. They abruptly stopped in midair before the insects could get any closer. Was perplexed as to how the monsters fell to the ground with a clang. There was no time to consider what the hero thought Rhea had done. They had to kill them first. The man hurried over and grabbed his Witcher sword from the inventory. He killed 3 monsters by swinging it in the direction of the insects. The girl apologized and he wanted to make sure Rhea was okay. Assumed she had stopped those needles and was relieved to be okay. However, Rhea shocked him by claiming that did it himself. Those things had very little magical power, and as soon as they got close to him, it just vanished. Grinned and conceded that it was pretty pathetic. These monsters were just as strange as the hero, in Rhea's opinion. These insect fragments appeared to be a magical instrument. The man was taken aback when he finally noticed. He believed that these creatures were magical devices designed to drive out invaders. This door was known as the low-level magical isolation door, and these guards were known as floating eyes. These magical instruments were all referred to as artifacts. They were intruders because, as it turned out, this building resembled ancient ruins. Furthermore, they were unable to see what was behind this door. Rhea and they were unable to determine what monsters might be concealed behind it. asked Rhea and suggested that they go back. Excited beyond belief, Rhea declared that they would not be allowed to return home. And Rhea investigated the vacant rooms they encountered. They checked every room, keeping those other rooms in mind. Beyond that door, they discovered 8 more doors in the rooms, but there was nothing at all behind them. There were plenty of floating guards here, but neither a way out of this foolish trap nor a way to the source of magical energy. According to what the hero read, this was a research center that was undoubtedly deserted. If so, Rhea accepted the man's suggestion that they continue. A spiral staircase that led high upward was discovered later. They proceeded along it until they reached another door that was marked with a warning. If someone entered without permission, they would be removed. The hero was going to take a potion for courage because, if one believed this warning sign, there was even more danger behind this door. Rhea didn't give a damn about the monsters. "Death awaits them," she cried. After taking the potion, the hero believed that their objective was to escape this hole rather than to annihilate monsters. However, it appeared that they would not be able to leave without a fight, advised the girl to exercise extreme caution. They entered an empty room after the man cautiously opened the next door. Thought there was another guard present when a barrage of needles suddenly descended upon them. He shielded Rhea with his shield and took the blow. Since their needles were falling as they got closer to him, the man did not understand how this attack was able to strike him. There were other guards among them, Rhea cautioned. Here there were mechanical wolves and floating guards of a different hue. They all meant to murder the invaders. In addition to the numerous monsters present, there was also a flying snake. The girl said she felt careless because of it, but the guy thought that wasn't the main issue. Asked Rhea to flee as the heroes were attacked by the flying guards. Rhea informed that he would require his stone spear during the escape. The girl turned toward the monsters and stopped, and the guy turned back to face her. She activated the stone spear and launched an assault on the assailants. Given that her attack did no harm to the flying guards, Rhea's expression was one of worry. When magic proved to be useless, was astounded by what he saw. Rhea yelled that one of the wolves was charging at the hero as she turned to face. They were frighteningly silent, but wasn't positive they were robots. He recommended that they taste his sword because magic was ineffective. Struck the enemy in the head with the sword staff after making this suggestion. His sword started to hiss and ring as soon as it made contact with the wolf. Sensed the guard's full sturdiness and realized it was more complicated than it first appeared. Cut the wolf in half while holding the sword with both hands. The Witcher sword could still cut it, the hero said with a sly smile. Naturally, he enjoyed chopping, but he had no interest in magic. The hero believed there was a catch because he had no idea what metal they were made of. Using these ideas, he evaluated the wolf's body. According to what he read, the wolf was made of second-class anti-chemical steel. It contained magical particles that had crystallized, negating any magical effect. As it turned out, they possessed complete magic resistance, which probably extended to all of the magical instruments in this room. They need more stone spears, Rhea informed the man. If they threw a shower of projectiles at the multicolored guards, they ought to be able to destroy them. It was a brilliant idea, the man thought. While the man used his sword to slay several more monsters, the girl held out her hand and unleashed a number of projectiles. He could now concentrate on the wolves, but they weren't the main issue. A massive snake that flickered in front of them all the time hindered them. It appeared to have a long, dangerous tail that was ready to attack. The hero told Rhea to jump because he saw the enormous snake was about to attack. The wolves were hit by the enormous snake just as the main characters leaped to their feet, and they dispersed like flies in all directions. Couldn't figure out why it was so powerful. In addition, the snake destroyed everything in its path, disregarding the magical instruments it was meant to protect. When Rhea saw that the snake was getting ready she alerted. A glittering mass of energy started to form from the snake's open mouth. "This is bad," the man said. At one point, the guard was obviously focusing a lot of energy on delivering a powerful blow. They would retreat as fast as they could to the staircase, the hero declared as he hurried to the exit. Following him, Rhea rushed out of the room. The snake brought down a massive pillar toward them as if anticipating their next move. The hero yelled that their circumstances were dire as the hexagonal pillar obstructed their way out. They had no way out after the obstacle broke their door. Furthermore, as the other guards kept moving forward, the enormous snake itself for the subsequent assault, they were forced to battle them, according to claimed that they had to take action against the snake, but his sword was unable to cut it. When he questioned Rhea if earth magic could bring it to the ground, the girl said that it couldn't because it was too powerful. However, Rhea saw that the snake had wings behind its back. She believed she could use a fireball to destroy the wings and bring it to the ground. The hero then declared that he would charge a fireball. When the charge would be sufficient to shatter them, he asked her, himself for the assault, and Rhea comprehended. According to Rhea, the hero's creation of a massive blazing sphere ought to be sufficient. The man realized and halted. He threw the massive blazing sphere at the snake after adding 700 mana points to it. Ultimately created a massive flaming fireball. Apparently sensing danger, the snake started to cover its wings. As the fireball transformed into a massive explosion, and the elf could only watch in fear. The guys saw that the snake was still hovering over them in the air after the flame subsided and the explosion's smoke hit the ground. Their power should have been enough to destroy its wings, the man said, cursing, but then had another thought. He gave Rhea a hopeful glance. When he called the girl, he asked if she could use his magic on her own this time. Rhea cried out that he had too much mana, making it impossible. This implied that would be the only one with the fireball. However, the hero realized that without precise control, he would not be able to strike the hidden wings. They then had to boost its power. Wasn't sure how much more should be added to break those wings for sure. They need to increase the power 20 times, the girl said. The man asked her to buy him some time and said they would do just that. Took a step back to get ready for the next attack as Rhea ran forward. Rhea outran the snake, which was already on the verge of attacking, and hurled a number of magical projectiles at it. Fireball's power increased in the meantime. The fireball quickly grew 10 times larger as it gained size and power. All magical tools had been destroyed except for the snake, but was still building up the magical power required for the spell. The hero was still able to avoid the snake's attacks even though the ground beneath them started to give way. They could do it, Rhea said, if he could continue in this manner. Was not, however, leaving a peculiar sense of unease. He looked up at the ceiling with concern. When he looked up, the man swore. Additionally, Rhea noticed that the ceiling was literally cracking at the seams when she looked up. The ceiling started to collapse as a result of the snake destroying a wall, leaving it without support. They will now be buried alive, the hero cried. When asked Rhea if they could use 10 fireballs to kill this snake, the girl said that wouldn't work. However, it might work if they doubled their power. Claimed he didn't have enough time, so they wouldn't be able to accomplish that either. Another enormous hexagonal pillar flew in their direction before he could finish speaking. The man asked Rhea how she felt, barely maintaining his balance. "I'm fine," Rhea said, but they had more serious issues. That's when the enormous ceiling started to fall. In a panic, Rhea asked what they would do while waving her hands, commanded her to run ahead rather than remain motionless. He abruptly had a change of heart and asked her to hold on to him. He picked up the girl as if she were a toy without waiting for a response. They couldn't pass up this chance because it came down to that. The hero declared that they would now sprint to the opposite end of the room and search for a different route there. When the snake saw that the adversaries were attempting to flee, it followed them. The man continued to run, but he failed to notice any intersections. This was a straight, sturdy corridor. All he could do was hope there was a staircase down ahead. When the hero realized they had collided with a wall, he stopped suddenly. was surprised when they came to a dead end and yelled that they were having serious issues. The snake was already coming toward them, Rhea said, looking back in horror. This was awful. The ceiling was no longer falling, but they would actually be buried alive if this snake kept going on its rampage. What the hero needed to do was think quickly. He had to figure out how to buy time so that the spell could be charged. Thought they might attempt to use the broken door to get back to the staircase. He thought he could move all of the debris and falling stones into the inventory, but he would have to avoid the snake's attacks first. After that, they would be done with this location. It was just not possible. As quickly as possible, they needed to think of something, realized that there was more at risk than just his life. Rhea considered all of this. Despite the doubt in her eyes, she decided. The girl requested that the fireball be passed to her by the hero, although she had previously informed him that she would not be able to control this magic, assumed she had some sort of plan. But even in that situation, she had to do it regardless. Apparently she had no plan either. Could only agree though because they had no other choice. Rhea neutralized any attacks that might endanger the user by using the magic power that was already present. All the damage Rhea sustained was absorbed by her hairpin. Wanted to stop Rhea because he believed it was too risky, but she called. With a slightly excited smile, she told him that adventures were a lot of fun, gave the girl the same enthusiastic glance. He couldn't figure out why she said that, was certain it was just a display of bravery. Rhea undoubtedly said it to ease his concerns about her. He did, however, completely concur with her. He smirked, but it was strained. Distracting Rhea from the magic was not the hero's goal. She kept boosting the fireball's power even though it appeared to be difficult for her. The fireball shot upward at one point, shouted in support of the girl as she aimed it at the enemy. Rhea was asked to do it by the man. When Rhea struck with all of her strength, the massive fireball struck the snake. The cursed creature was knocked off its wings by the immense fireball's power. Rushed to the monster to strike the final blow while the snake struggled to contain the fireball. The man leaped to his feet and used his magic sword staff to strike the snake's head with all of his might. This opportunity only came about because of Rhea, even though it was extremely challenging. Cried out that he could not pass up this chance and gave it his all. With a final roar, the enormous snake fell to the ground, and the man stood beside it. His heart was about to burst from his chest as he grasped the weapon and shield with his remaining strength. He made an effort to breathe. Turned to face Rhea, who she remembered, was approached by the girl. He did it, she said with a smile. She was apparently all right too. Inquired if Rhea still felt careless. Rhea was unable to pinpoint it precisely because there was still a lot of carelessness in the room. I think all of this will go away in a week, she said with a smile. They were able to deal with it in the end, and it was time to leave. They could return through the remnants of the ceiling if they managed to clear the debris, but there was no path. However, now believed it was not feasible. He sat on the ground and advised resting first. The girl accepted and took a seat close by to relax, looked at her hairpin once more. She put them both in danger, the hero claimed, in the hopes that the magic would not spiral out of control. However, her hairpin prevented the magic from getting out of control. It was rather reckless, thought. With a smile, the girl reminded them that everything had worked out. She wondered what would occur the next time. The man grinned and added that they would need to hope that it wouldn't happen again. He wouldn't have much time left if all of their adventures turned out this way. Rhea grinned and concurred with him. She did, however, appear to be quite content now. Hopefully, Rhea questioned about whether he would actually bring her along the next time. The man believed that she had demonstrated her ability to defend herself in combat because of this case. Rhea could use her hairpin to get away from danger if needed. First of all, he would not stop anyone, even a young girl, from having adventures if they possessed the requisite skills. In addition, they were dishonest. Realized that being with others who were similar to him was preferable to being by himself. This would be even more interesting, the hero said, reaching out to her. He grinned at Rhea and proposed that they travel together as friends going forward. It came as a huge surprise to Rhea. She had joy in her eyes. She hurried to embrace after agreeing with pleasure. Later, while looking into the miner's illness, the hero went into the guild and gave them the magical tools he had discovered in the underground ruins. When the girls learned that they had been in subterranean ruins, they became frightened. The ruins were known as Magic Eye, they retorted. According to its name, it was on par with monsters of E rank, while the second one, known as Blue Magic Eye, was on par with monsters of D rank. He brought a blue metal wolf that was on par with a B rank monster. It was hard for the girls to believe had defeated them, but it wasn't just that. He removed the remaining monsters they had come across in the ruins from the inventory. The faces of the girls lit up with horror. They asked the man a question because they had never seen wings like that before, but the hero was clueless as to what it might be. They defeated all of those magical tools, the most significant of which was probably the source of the sickness. It would eventually leave the mines. To the surprise of the girls, Rhea also resisted it. In just half a day, they were able to solve a problem that no other adventurer could, and they were truly appreciative of their efforts. The girls had never seen anything like this large artifact before. One of the girls committed all of the artifacts to memory when she helped to conquer the ruins. The guild knew even less about this artifact than she did, if she knew nothing at all. The guild's lack of knowledge about the artifact surprised the guy, but he should be able to evaluate it given his expertise. Aimed his assessment ability at the enormous beast. A medium Annihilation cannon prototype was this snake number 1. Thus, it was indeed a snake. Before returning, the hero checked the ruins twice. This snake got out of control, which is why the place was abandoned. He had to keep quiet about the snake because he would face trouble if the girls found out. According to one of the girls, they were curious about the artifact's power because it was so big. "It's really strong," the man said. "It sliced metal wolves all over with its tail." The girls were appalled to hear that the hero had killed roughly 30 wolves, but the snake had probably killed many more. Destroyed 30 blue metal wolves, according to the administrators, who requested only a minute. According to a concerned administrator, he was on par with an A-rank adventurer if he faced that many opponents. Half awake from her slumber on his back, Rhea declared that the snake was a rank in her eyes. After that, the administrator went on to explain. She was about to certify him as a B-rank adventurer, the hero thought. Naturally, one needed to be a leader in order to be a B-rank adventurer. At the moment, the hero's highest rank was B rank. Thought he had accomplished something remarkable. The hero and Rhea visited San the following day and wished him a good morning. The man declared with joy that the miner's disease case had been resolved. "They finished it 3 days ago," Rhea said, waving her hand. The elderly man gazed at them for a while, bewildered. He yelled in surprise, not understanding how they were able to solve the problem and complete the investigation so fast. The conversation shifted to coke fuel after the hero gave them the report. They mostly discussed ways to increase production and stop technology from leaking. The hero's current country, the kingdom, appeared to be planning to begin selling it. For this, they had to pay technical fees. Felt that this revolutionary technology would significantly change the country. However, the man pondered for a moment that it would result in an excessively large scale. He felt uneasy about these ideas. Presumably, he would focus on business settlements somewhere in the capital and participate in talks with the kingdom. However, made the decision to give the Coal Miners Association all of the responsibilities and the profit share. He had not yet completed his journey and was still an adventurer. So a whole week went by. The Coal Miners Association was successfully negotiated with. Rhea was given a guild card once the hero acknowledged to the guild that he had brought her into the party. In addition, he received achievements for being the youngest and fastest adventurer to achieve B rank. This was still insignificant in comparison to national stories. Rhea was ecstatic and couldn't take her eyes off her guild card. The hero said he wanted to discuss Ria's hairpin with her. It was as black as tar when they left the ruins, but for some reason it has since turned back into color. The girl responded that it completely recharged because of the magical power released. The girl chuckled and claimed that it would take her around 30 years to recharge on her own, but this time it only took 2 days. Was frightened to think of the type of mana he possessed. The man thought it would charge more quickly if he used magic. That was not the case, the girl said. It would just shatter if he did that. Came up to them during their chat and expressed regret to the hero for keeping them waiting. He could now process the iron lizard's metal anywhere there was equipment, she said, since the magical power had been removed. The man asked Ria if she needed armor and thanked her for the good news. It was too heavy, so the girl spread her arms and said she didn't need it. Overall, did not insist on it. With a sorrowful sigh, assumed they were heading to a different city. The hero thought they would just go along the road and see where it leads them. Saw that kept her gaze fixed on him and gave him a genuine smile. The man abruptly turned to face the doors and put his arm around the girls to protect them. At the door, 2 human figures emerged. Unable to comprehend what was going on, asked, according to the hero's response, something simply vanished. The man was interested in Ria's viewpoint. The girl responded that the magical background vanished about 100 kilometers away. The possibility that it was him startled the man. Even could sense the magic, but he was unable to determine who had magical overload. It had to have been amazing magic. However, the hero could assert that no one in the world was capable of casting a spell of that magnitude. It seemed to him that an artifact more powerful than the flying snake had shut down. Beyond the distant mountain that is visible from here, sensed that something had happened. Was asked by the hero which cities were located 100 kilometers away. Probably a city at the base of a volcano, the girl said. There was a very dangerous labyrinth with B-rank monsters on the way, and she was shocked that the guy actually wanted to go there. However, the hero merely grinned and stated that they would undoubtedly go there in that situation. It would only be more enjoyable in this manner, said with a smile. Ria chuckled and happily backed him up. With a heavy sigh, said, I already knew his answer, and smiled sadly. She was convinced that was a real explorer. As a result, the girl and the hero bid farewell to everyone they knew and departed. And Ria were running toward the mountains 3 hours later when the man noticed Ria acting strangely. Thought it strange that she was floating upside down in the air. He hoped she was okay as he asked her. Ria answered that everything was good. She appeared to be bored rather than exhausted. Evidently, she experienced no negative effects or from her consistent use of levitation, most likely because she employed discharged magic. She flew at a low speed at first, but she would reach 70% of the hero's speed if he did not accelerate. They would literally arrive at the point in 10 minutes at this rate. At last, Ria brightened and exclaimed, there were monsters ahead. She advised to murder them, intended to arrive in the city more quickly, but it seems they were at a loss for options. However, his eyes widened with curiosity as soon as he saw who was rushing toward them. They were being chased by enormous crabs. The man's eyes glistened with anticipation. He declared that he had shifted his perspective and recommended warming up. Ria was prepared for battle already. Ria fired numerous arrows into the massive swarm of crabs as pulled out his sword. A number of monsters were struck by the arrows, shattering their shells. Ria didn't understand why the hero had asked the girl to attack them without killing them, wiped his drool and wondered how she missed it. It would be wasteful to kill them all because they all looked so delicious. Ria was unsure if these creatures were edible because she had never seen them before. They weren't necessarily edible just because they resembled crabs. Made the decision to check with appraisal in that situation. Those 4-clawed crabs were edible, as demonstrated by his skill. The man was relieved that they could be consumed. Ria also saw monsters on the opposite side, was happy and hoped that something delicious would also be there. Went white with shock. They were attacked by brown cockroaches, which he knew were also edible. yelled that it was time to flee, but Rhea did not comprehend his abrupt actions. The girl didn't understand why they were running away and felt they appeared weak. They destroyed his appetite, yelled. They eventually separated after a while, and the man paused to catch his breath. Rhea puffed her cheeks resentfully as he held her in his left hand. They soon arrived in the city of. At the entrance, a soldier met them and said traveling with a child was unusual. He hoped they were okay because there were a lot of monsters on the roads right now. Rhea was shocked to hear him say those monsters were weak. Those monsters were D rank according to the soldier, so he didn't believe they were that weak. The young man then became aware of the hero's unusual sword staff. Based on their weaponry, appeared to be very powerful. The man believed that his Witcher sword was unique, but it seems that not only adventurers and blacksmiths could comprehend this. Grinned and said that, aside from cockroaches, they would have no trouble dealing with such monsters. The hero wondered why there were so many monsters close to the city, assuming that something had happened. The guard's response was hesitant. He replied the city was surrounded by 4 forests inhabited by many monsters. Monsters have recently started to escape from one forest and attempt to enter nearby forests. Upon reflection, every monster they encountered on the road shifted in a single direction. Though little was known, the man surmised that perhaps a traveler was aware of the cause of migration. There was a rumor that the guild was aware of what was going on. The guard stated that he believed it was not a large-scale incident because they did not send a high-level team. Reasoned that the guild might be concealing something. When the metal lizard appeared and when he found the bandit hideout, both guilds also kept information to themselves. This could be another issue of a similar magnitude, he thought. The girl sensed something was amiss, climbed fearfully on top of and grabbed his neck. Asking what was going on, she yelled. It was a simple earthquake, the hero said with a smile. It happened frequently near volcanoes. Detected a scent and thought it was sulfur. The soldier responded that although earthquakes have been occurring more frequently lately, he did not see anything out of the ordinary. They regarded it as one of this city's charms. In any case, the city of was happy to have visitors. The heroes were then able to enter the castle after the gates at the walls opened. It was a city with hot springs and ancient ruins. Rhea was pleasantly impressed, as was. The discovery of hot springs here was unexpected by the hero. He also spotted a massive leviathan of a building. Compared to the cost per night was 10 times higher here. But there was something here that was truly worth the money. Rhea went into their room and took a look around. The hero saw that they had their own kitchen and 3 rooms. The room itself featured 2 spacious, independent beds and an opulent appearance. Asked Rhea if she could use magic to boil the crabs. He was eager to give them a try. Rhea concurred. They put a big pot on the burner after filling it with water in a few minutes. They eagerly awaited the big crab claw's eventual boiling and preparation. Rhea continued to touch the hot pot with her hands. The man was relieved even though he felt another earthquake start. Rhea was asked to move away from the pot. Additionally, he saw that Rhea had already become accustomed to constantly using levitation. The eagerly anticipated dish was eventually prepared. Proposed that they eat the large crab pieces that had been placed on the table. The hero joyfully declared that the thick crab claw was extremely meaty when he broke it. Took a large bite. Although it tasted like regular crab, it was incredibly tasty. Rhea wanted to try too. Her tiny hands caught a massive claw, which she then bit into. Rhea lisped that it was delicious, her mouth full. Her eyes blazed with joy. She asked what he thought of the hero. Because they also needed breakfast, the hero asked the girl not to eat everything. Rhea accepted his offer to put leftovers in the inventory. Rhea began to feel drowsy immediately after eating. Her eyes started to close and the hero saw it. Immediately after dinner, she dozed off. She appeared to be a typical child, but I had no idea how old she was. It's time to go to sleep, said with a smile. Rhea climbed into her bed and dozed off immediately. got up and decided he had to find out why the magical background had suddenly stopped when they were in, but first he needed to unwind and get enough sleep. In addition, there was an outdoor bath in this city. The hero washed with a basic water sphere because there were no baths in the cities he visited due to fuel issues. He had to take advantage of this opportunity while Rhea slept. Grinning, the man made the decision to soak in the hot springs until Rhea awoke. Even though it was a little warm, the protagonist thought that it was still pleasant here as he smiled up at the sky while soaking in the hot springs. He noticed there was no shampoo when he looked around. That was to be expected since water alone could remove dirt from clothing and the body. It appeared to be a distinct characteristic and could have been the result of an artifact. It would be disastrous if someone destroyed it. The hero was unwinding when he heard an odd noise and got up to look around. He thought it was another earthquake and repositioned the towel on his head. But then he heard Rhea's voice and became concerned. He felt uneasy for some reason. Although she was able to float, she most likely became frightened of the earthquake, but recalled that she most likely couldn't float while she was asleep. The sound was getting louder, and she was flying right here. The doors flew open and a scared Rhea flew in before he could think any more. It was too late when warned her not to go inside. The girl fell back into the spring after colliding with him head-on. Rhea returned to her bed after the incident and dozed off. The hero initially didn't know why she had gone silent, but he later realized she had dozed off. It would be terrible if she woke up again, but he still wanted to go to the guild. His only option was to hope that there wouldn't be another earthquake. He assured her in a low voice that he would return shortly and was going to the branch of the Adventurers Guild. Took one of the quests there and inquired about its specifics. In other words, he wanted to look into the artifact, that is, the disappearance of a significant amount of magical power. He had the same feeling about. Examining the reason behind monster migration was the only quest associated with this. It was best to keep the existence of the artifact a secret because the hero had no idea how knowledgeable the guild was. He asked the receptionist if the guild was aware of the current situation and explained that he wanted to explore the forest. In order to avoid returning with information that was already known, he wanted to know how much they knew. The girl expressed regret but added that she was also ignorant of the forest. A badge on her clothing caught the hero's attention. She was a trainee, it turned out. He was aware of everything and believed she wasn't acting ignorant. He had heard earlier that the guild was far more knowledgeable. If accurate, they were concealing information from employees as well. Every other employee he questioned any knowledge. He had to put pressure on the girl, but he apologized to her in his head. He clarified that he wished to look into the loss of enormous magical power. Was aware that it was associated with an artifact, somewhere in the forest probably. Someone told him to stop while he was explaining this. The woman appeared to be employed by the guild as well. He was asked to follow a woman with long hair and glasses. She had to know what he had discovered. Merely grinned, but the receptionist didn't comprehend anything. They sat across from one another in an office after she escorted him inside. She questioned about his knowledge of artifacts. It had to do with the artifact, he reasoned. He hoped it would be okay if he told her everything, assuming she was a senior employee. I suddenly felt something strange when I was in, he explained. He asked his companion who understood magic, and she explained that it was because of the abrupt loss of great magical power. He deduced that that scale could only be produced by an artifact. The fact that the woman knew Rhea's name made him suspicious. She also wanted to make sure that was his name. Apparently the information hadn't leaked, she said. He replied Rhea when she asked the girl's name. He was concerned that he shouldn't have brought her up. More than anything, he couldn't figure out how she knew their names. Everything was just as she had anticipated. They recently learned of new explorers in. They were incredibly strong, it said. In addition, very few explorers were able to get from 2 in a single day. They only needed 3.5 hours in actuality. She was aware of them because of this. Information nevertheless spread surprisingly quickly. There were no phones in this world. People must have used magic to transmit information. In any case, he had no desire to oppose the organization. He inquired about the artifact's information concealment. Only a handful of adventurers and guild employees knew her response. They had planned to make the announcement in public, but an outsider advised them to wait. He figured it had been ordered hidden by someone higher up. He thought the guild was a powerful organization. A feudal lord would be the one to forbid them. That wasn't always the case, she said, but occasionally they used this method to deal with non-urgent issues. Therefore, it wasn't an urgent situation. The woman grinned and said that the criminals had already been apprehended and put to death. Though he felt it wasn't, was shocked that the problem had already been fixed. She advised him to mention her name and explain that he came because of if he wished to look into it on his own. If he needed information, she was happy to help. He left the guild after their conversation. He ultimately found nothing of value. Knowing that a third party was concealing information was sufficient for the time being. They claimed that although the artifact was disabled by criminals, monsters continued to flee. That means it had to be destroyed, not just disabled. Discovering it would provide more information. Rhea thought they would battle monsters today and set out with the hero. He confirmed with a smile. The magical power disappeared as they entered the forest. They would hunt monsters and look for artifact traces today. If she sensed monsters or strange magic, he asked her to tell him. Rhea was thrilled. She brought up the fact that it was a little more difficult to find broken magic tools. For the average person, it was only marginally more difficult to find a helpless artifact. Concurred. He inquired as to where the destroyed artifact was located. I don't know, Rhea said, looking ahead. All around, there were numerous powerful magical sources. Saying that they would search everything, he cracked his knuckles. With pleasure, she consented. They saw green wolves as they ran through the forest. Rhea shot stone arrows at them before they responded. The barrage confused the wolves, making it impossible for them to dodge. A few barely made it out alive. Giant boars activated behind them and charged with enormous tusks as they attacked. The boars exploded when threw fireballs. As Rhea continued to hurl stone spears, he lifted his shield for close combat. He believed that they ought to plunder every beast, but he saw something else. Rhea yelled that there were numerous monsters, but she dealt with them. She killed them more quickly than he could steal, so he grinned. He slowed down because he had to go up to targets to put them in inventory. He thought about using magic to optimize, drawing corpses with magical power. Instead, he tried lifting trees and ground. Rhea gazed bewildered. It demonstrated the carelessness of his magic control, she realized. He requested that she bring him dead monsters. They were too heavy, she conceded. Instead, she advised him to move more quickly. Why hadn't he used acceleration magic? When he first heard of it, he thought she used it to move. He pictured adding mana to his body to increase his speed. He tried and agreed. Rhea warned him not to speed in her direction. He tried a weak boost for safety, but it didn't move. He tried again after feeling that he had expended too much mana. This time, he moved so quickly that Rhea was taken aback. He screamed as he saw a tree ahead and spun around in the air like he had been blown away. He crashed into it and leaves fell on his head, proving that a collision was unavoidable. He knocked the tree over, not just struck it. It was an inconvenient magic. Rhea hurried in concern. I'm fine, he said with a smile. He pondered why he wasn't hurt. It was most likely his clothing. He remembered that the armor used mana to increase defense. It reminded him of the leather armor of. Did its magic activate during impact? He asked. It was always active, she said. It continuously consumed released MP and grew stronger with him, shocking him. In other words, it was a monstrous armor whose strength increased with his maximum mana. She was shocked that he was unaware. He now knew why he had lived. If he could learn acceleration magic, he inquired. She urged him to try again. Thus he explored and killed monsters while training. He struck trees every time he accelerated, but he was unharmed. He could do it. He finally clenched his fist. Where was the closest monster? He inquired. He gave a great shout when she pointed. Although he could quickly toggle it, he realized he couldn't steer while active. A little monster looked around nearby. When it heard him, it straightened. As soon as it appeared in front of it, it froze. It attempted to claw him, but he kicked its stomach and turned on acceleration once more. It was paralyzed and flung into rocks by the blow. He sought Ria's viewpoint. Movements were strange but manageable, she said. She turned abruptly and felt a strange, strong magic close by. They gazed off into the woods. It was here Ria grinned. Noticed an odd object on the floor. Immune to magic, these large circular seals resemble the ruins of. It had an odd lid, Ria said, complimented her work and surmised that something was underneath.